Call the special council meeting to order for Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the special council meeting of Wednesday, December 10th, 2025? Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move right into bylaws. I have four of which are back for adoption from Monday night's regular council meeting. First bylaw for consideration is from Finance Department regarding Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 4223, 2025. Can I get a motion that council adopt Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 4223, 2025? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Lissette. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. The next bylaw is from Finance as well regarding sanitary sewer rates amendment bylaw number 4224, 2025. Can I get a motion that council adopt sanitary sewer rates amendment bylaw number 4224, 2025? Mover, please. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Blissett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And up next, we have consideration from Finance regarding solid waste and recycling collection and disposal amendment bylaw number 4225, 2025. Can I get a motion that council adopt solid waste and recycling collection and disposal amendment bylaw number 4225, 2025? Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, can I get a motion that council adopt the water frontage tax amendment bylaw number 4226, 2025? Mover, please. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks so much.
Mayor Price, can we just call a quick pause just for 1 second?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Well, council, it truly is a good day. You know, any chance you get where you're out ahead of IT, you know, it's obviously a pretty good day. So, yeah, we got ahead of them a little bit there. Moving into new business, I will now hand the meeting over to Charlotte, who's going to walk us through today's budget-related items. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, council, members of the public and staff. To the last budget meeting of 2025. Thank you, Marnie. So I've handed out an amended memo. This memo was added to your package last night, and I was moving on some thought line and had forgot to finish it, moved on to something else and didn't delete that. So I've done that. The other thing I've done is just change the wording slightly at the end of the memo, as opposed to a little bit of a softer comment around the 2% for the library in terms of them being able to continue their operations at 2%. I've changed the wording slightly to highlight the fact that they would not be able to continue current operations and provide current levels of services at the 2% that's built into the budget. So I just feel it's important to highlight that. I'll just quickly go through the memo before I hand everything over to Ursula. She has a presentation for council. So there's a couple of areas that we're exploring with the library to find cost savings and efficiencies. One of them was to change the year-end engagement from an audit to a review. We followed up with the director at the libraries branch, and they were fantastic in getting back to us very promptly with a no. So the library must continue to be audited. So we will go back and speak with BDO and see if there are any other options there for reducing the cost of that engagement while still getting an audit opinion. So while that's unfortunate news, on the good side of the ledger is the support that IT will be providing to the library starting in 2026. It is expected that support basically integrating the library's IT environment with the city's would save the library somewhere around $14,000. And that would be a fully integrated savings. So of course, 2026 is expected to be the transition year. So whether or not all of those savings would be realized in that year will, at the end of the year, we'll let you know. At the end of 2026. So it's a little bit uncertain is what I'm trying to say. And then in terms of the cost for the library to be in the building, the library doesn't pay rent, but they do pay occupancy costs. And those occupancy costs, for the most part, have remained fairly stable over the past 5 years. 2 exceptions, insurance and janitorial. The insurance has increased 100%. From about $500,000 a year, and that's for building their proportionate share of the building and liability insurance. And the cost is now $10,000, so an increase of $5,000 for the library. But at the same time, the contractor who provides the janitorial at the library we've had a new contractor, and the savings there offset and a little bit the increase in the insurance. So there's a small surplus at the end of that day. One of the bigger issues is sort of the maintenance costs at the building, and it's very difficult for the library to plan for some of those because they're not involved in the planning that the city does. And Ursula and I have talked about this and I've explained to Ursula what Tony, Director Hitu, is working on with respect to our facilities, a very robust assessment of those facilities, prioritizing repairs, laying out timelines for major work. And this would be a huge help for the library so that they can do more planning around fundraising to help fund some of those repairs. And finally, wages. So wages at the library, while they're not the CUPE rates, the increases are harmonized. The CUPE increases are harmonized, or the library increases are harmonized with the CUPE increase. So I've provided a schedule that shows that on March 1st, 2023, CUPE agreement it had a 4.5% increase, March 2024, 4.5%, and then 3% for the remaining 2 years of the collective agreement. So while 2% for the whole library budget it isn't 2% on wages, but because the wages are such a high percentage of the overall costs, a 2% increase for the library over time erodes any of those, any of the extras that 2% on the full budget would create. So it is becoming a pinch point. And so that's all I'll say. I'll entertain some questions.
Councillor Blissett, then Councillor Graham.
So I wonder if you could clarify for me. So when our IT services will be helping out at the library, are we going to keep track of the hours, and that is in one way billed to the library, and then, so because the library is paid for not just by the city of Cranbrook, but also by the regional district. So I was wondering on how that goes.
Good point.
Thank you, Councillor Blissett, through the mayor. Yes, we would be taking a look at how we would deal with that with the regional district. It's going to take a little bit of discussion with their CFO and just letting them know that this is a new way of providing that service. So yeah, we will definitely be embedding that.
And further, do we do that with our maintenance too on the building? Is that billed to the library and then we're paying our portion and regional district is paying theirs?
Councillor Blissett, through the mayor. So the library pays for those occupancy costs out of this, out of the funds that they receive from the city and the RDEC. So through that, it's taken care of.
Yep. Councillor Graham, then Councillor Ray.
Yeah, thank you. Can you let me know what's the starting wage at the library for somebody who is like part-time, and what's full-time wage per hour, please?
I don't have those details, Ursula may. Councillor Graham.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Graham through the mayor. So the starting wage depends on the position, of course, just as it does here. So at our basic level, the pages who are most junior position, they start at minimum wage. And then, like I say, depending on the job, the education and skill levels, experience levels, it will vary. What I can say is I don't have the pay scale in front of me, so I can't give you exact amounts. But what I will say is that every 5 years, the library board conducts a review of the entire wage scale, and looks at comparable positions at the City of Cranbrook, the regional district, and similar sized libraries to see if the wages that how we are compensating for the positions requiring, that similar level of skills and knowledge are in line with what's being provided for at those comparators. And based on that, our wages are in line with that for most positions. There is one position that is not in line, but that's just because of the nature of the funding. It wouldn't be able to accommodate bringing that position in line. So that position is kind of the outlier, but all the other positions at the library are being compensated at a comparable rate to what a similar position, say, at the city would be getting paid. So
Would it be possible to get a copy of this pay scale, please, at some point?
I will talk to my personnel committee on the library board at getting that to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ursula. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. So first off, excellent job to our head librarian on your CBC Daybreak interview this morning. So I was pleased to listen to that. So I've got a couple of questions just wondering about, and you've probably thought about all these things. So just thinking about the audit services. So because BDO is the auditor for the city, does that give us a better price for the library audit? And has there ever been consideration of putting out an RFP to see if there's any other auditors who might be able to provide the same service at a lesser cost?
So Councillor Ray through the mayor. So per the Library Act, our library has to be audited in the same manner as the city. So if the city were to change their auditor, then we would be following along and going along with the same auditor. But
Okay.
so we do not have that capacity to independently seek out another auditor, like I say, unless the city does.
Okay, thank you. So thinking along similar lines in terms of insurance, have we looked at other insurance providers, get some quotes to see if there's any better deals out there? I know insurance has gone up everywhere, but I'm just wondering if we've looked into that.
Councillor Ray through the mayor. So the insurance that we are involved in is the building insurance. It's our building. So yes, we go out to RFP for insurance, and that is actually coming up for 2026, I believe it is. So we will be going out for a quote.
Okay. And as part of that insurance, do you then hold separate directors and officers liability insurance that's specific to the library board?
Councillor Ray through the mayor, it's liability insurance, but I'm not sure if it covers the board. I would have to double check that okay, it does, Ursula says.
Okay. So this may not be relevant, but just in case it is, Imagine Canada has a nonprofit accreditation program, and they've just announced that in partnership with Intact Insurance, if nonprofits become accredited, they are eligible for a discount on their insurance. But that might not be relevant because of the close partnership with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Council? No? Okay. Thanks, Ursula.
Okay. Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Today's presentation explains why stable investment in the library is essential to sustaining the core services in 2026 and beyond. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end. Oh, there we go. Not pointing it in the right direction. So here's just an overview of the things that I will be touching on over the course of my presentation. There we go. Okay, so public libraries ensure that every resident, regardless of income, background, or circumstance, can access information that helps them learn, participate, and thrive. The Cranbrook Public Library is part of a global public library network committed to barrier-free access, treating people not as consumers of information, but as investors in themselves and their community. Our purpose goes beyond books and digital resources. It is about enabling people to find, understand, and apply information in their lives, and to provide access to material that supports their leisure activities and cultural enrichment. Programs that teach skills, foster creativity, and building confidence, whether one-on-one technology help or Science Saturdays, support education, inclusion, and civic engagement in our residents. For centuries, public libraries, or libraries in general, have existed so people can access knowledge. Here in British Columbia, the Free Libraries Act of 1891 for the first time affirmed that access to knowledge should not depend on income. That principle of free and open access remains central to the library's social contract with our community today. The Cranbrook Public Library exists because the city actually committed to providing this service to our community. The council appoints the trustees, approves the budget, and ensures ongoing public access to library services, while the library board governs operations at arm's length. Why is it set up this way? A quote from the November 2025 edition of Municipal World Magazine in Ontario summarizes the reason. Quote, libraries are public institutions with a democratic mission to support learning, literacy, and access to information regardless of income, background, or politics. Library boards exist to keep politics out of programming, collections, and staffing. That protects intellectual freedom, inclusion, and public trust, end quote. Like all public libraries, Cranbrook relies primarily on local government funding for day-to-day operations. Provincial grants support specific programs and shared services, while donations and one-time grants allow us to enhance and pilot services. Because our mandate is to provide free access, our ability to generate revenue is limited, focused mainly on basic cost recovery. Public libraries are designed to deliver public value, not profit. The Provincial Public Libraries branch publishes annual statistics that show how libraries across the province are funded. For Cranbrook, the data show that we rely more heavily than most libraries on donations and one-time grants to sustain services, which is not a stable foundation for operations or long-term planning. Provincial funding constitutes a modest share of our budget, even before the more than 15 years of frozen support. So just to give you a sense, back in 2008, so that was before the cut and then subsequent freezing, the province of government grant constituted approximately 11% of our overall budget. So local, municipal, and regional support is the cornerstone that makes it possible to maintain basic operations, staff, collections, programs, and welcoming spaces. Strong local investment is what allows the Cranbrook Public Library to serve the residents of Cranbrook and Area C effectively and sustainably. When we compare local government funding per resident, a clear gap emerges between the support the Cranbrook Public Library receives and that provided to libraries elsewhere in the province. The city's contribution, though essential and greatly valued, has increased only modestly from about $29 per capita in 2016 to just over $31 in 2024. The purpose of this slide is not to blame or shame, but it is really to illustrate that the request that the library is making to you is not out of line with what other libraries are doing in the province. And bringing the city's investment closer to the provincial average would help ensure the library can fully meet the evolving needs of our community. The library's purpose is in its name. We exist to serve the public. Our greatest investments are in the people and the place that make this possible. The staff who deliver essential programs and support, and the facility that welcomes the community every day. Yet as employment and facility costs continue to rise, the portion of our budget available for materials and programs has declined. Today, a quarter of our materials budget depends on donations, and every program we offer relies on other grants or cost recovery. These measures are really temporary solutions, not sustainable strategies for delivering core services that define the library's public mandate. Council's steady support, annual increases of 2% from 2020 through 2025 has been greatly appreciated. Additional funding in 2023 helped offset sharp inflationary costs, while funds approved in 2022 and received in 2024, originally intended for a part-time position and expanded collections, were redirected by the board to preserve core services amid continued cost pressures. Even with these prudent measures, rising expenses in 2025 exceeded available resources, forcing the board to reduce opening hours. That decision was especially painful because it came during the library's 100th anniversary, a milestone that we really wanted to have be a time of celebration and growth, not contraction. Rising costs continue to put significant pressure on the library's budget, as Charlotte has touched on. What cost $100 in wages in 2020 will cost $125 in 2026. And insurance costs that were $100 in 2020 had already climbed to $174 by 2024. Many other cost centers, such as, say, shipping, or the Canada Pension Plan contributions, have also risen significantly over the past 5 years. The library has stretched every dollar and found efficiencies wherever possible, but we have now reached the limits of what can be absorbed without further accepting service. Over the past 2 years, the library has done everything possible to stay within budget. We reduced staffing levels and hours of operation, increased fees where feasible, and made very lean assumptions about building maintenance for the coming year. And of course, the city's IT department has committed to taking on our IT support beginning in 2026. So we no longer have to contract IT support externally. We rely on one-time grants, even for mandated obligations, such as occupational health and safety training, while donations continue to significantly subsidize our ability to provide current, reliable materials in a wide range of formats to our patrons. These efforts demonstrate that before coming to council with this request, the library board pursued all reasonable internal efficiencies and short-term measures to keep the request to an absolute minimum. So to maintain 2025 service levels in 2026, the library needs an additional $39,079. This amount covers inflationary increases and cost of living adjustments only. It does not restore services cut in 2025 or expand collections, which have been essentially flat funded for many years. In fact, the base budget of what we've been spending on collections has been the same since 2007, about $75,000. This is a lean, carefully considered request designed to meet community needs while respecting fiscal reality. So I want to finish by saying that the library works hard to directly support Council's strategic plan goals. It provides a safe and welcoming space for study, work, recreation, social connection, and even to just get out of the elements. It provides programs to help build skills, reduce isolation, and connect neighbors, while technology access and support help residents adapt and thrive in the digital world. Library collections support learning and new perspectives. And staff offer trusted guidance and empathy. In fact, just yesterday, I got an email. We had received a phone call from a patron who had a bad car accident recently and now suffers from migraines. And she wanted to let us know, and these are her words, that the Libby audiobooks have literally saved her. In practical terms, the library helps make life more affordable and more connected, allowing people to borrow instead of buy so that they can use their precious dollars for other important things in their life, improve skills, expand knowledge, and feel part of the community. The library is one of the most effective tools Council has for building a safe, vibrant, and connected community. Every dollar invested in the library helps residents learn, adapt, and participate more fully in community life through our collections, programs, spaces, staff, and technology. By ensuring adequate funding for the library, Council is not just supporting an institution, it is investing in our community's capacity to thrive today and hopefully for the next 100 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ursula. Councillor Bassett, start out with questions.
Oh, thank you for your presentation, Ursula. I was wondering, when you showed the slide that showed the contribution from the city, does that include the contribution from the regional district, or is it just the city?
Councillor Blazat, through the mayor, yes, that shows complete total local government support, so the city and the regional district.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So last year, of course, City Council was not able or did not fund the requested increase, and that led to a reduction in hours at the library. And it's pretty clear that the ask this year is just to maintain last year's levels of service, not the years before, in order to keep things going to that 39,000. If the library does not get the 39,000, the board, I guess, will have to look at further reductions, and probably the only reductions are to reduce the number of hours again that the library is open. Is that, you don't want to presuppose the board's decision, because I know the board supports 39,000 addition for sure, but I don't think there are many other options.
Yeah, Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor. Yes, I can't presuppose what the board's decision will be, but as the major areas of our expenditures where there is some discretion, the two key areas in our budget are staffing, so employment and collections. And as I said, with our collections, I mean, this ties directly to our core business, and those are under severe strain already. So yes, really the only feasible thing will be to reduce the number of hours that we're open, because it all comes down to staffing really as being our major cost of operations, because we are a service.
Councillor Popoff, then Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Ursula. So the 39,000, is that 100% Cranbrook, or is that all only 80% Cranbrook and 20% regional district?
Councillor Popoff through the mayor, that is it would be split 80% city and 20% regional district.
So 7,000 of that would actually be the regional district. Thank you.
Correct.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really pleased to see the support from IT. You know, the library's it's a unique arrangement, right? To have a library board and yet have kind of be right integrated with the city. So it's great to see that we're able to take down those silos and provide support from IT that's going to be more cost effective and hopefully more helpful to you as well. So and the savings around subscriptions and stuff, like that's awesome. That's so great. I really appreciate that. So when we look at the deficit of $39,079, and then we look at the potential savings by working with the city IT, have we given any thought to doing a conservative estimate? Because I realize we may not realize those full savings in 2026, but doing a conservative estimate on what we would save and how that, and adjusting the anticipated deficit accordingly.
Councillor Ray, through the mayor, we've discussed it. I haven't had a chance to connect with Leon to, you know, shore something up. This is definitely assuming full integration, and I wouldn't be comfortable putting a number on it, but I can certainly bring something back, have another discussion with Leon, and then bring something back.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, we're just wanting to, I think it would be helpful if we could adjust the anticipated deficit with a conservative estimate on what the savings would be even for this initial year.
I mean, it'd probably be fairly safe to assume, you know, 50% of
Yeah.
the anticipated savings.
Mhm.
But I'd probably be a little bit more comfortable having if I could have a discussion with IT.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds good. And then at what point in the budget process will council make a decision on that? Is that today or another day?
Councillor Ray, through the mayor, it would be another day. We would bring something back, just like we do a number of, you know, we have the discussions and then we bring you know, a memo back with a resolution for council's consideration. So in the new year.
Thank you.
Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. Now, maybe Charlotte, you can help me with this. Last year, I remember talking about that the library received a grant from, was it the provincial government? But you were reluctant to use it at something, and there was some concern about that. Could you, did that money get used up? And is that considered with this shortfall?
Councillor Blissett, through the mayor, I'll answer at a high level and then
Okay.
turn it over to Ursula. My understanding is that all that money has been spent. There might be a few $1,000s
Okay.
left in it. And due to the funding decisions last year, there was, you know, the funds were used more than probably the board would have preferred. And that's one of the issues that the library runs into. Just in researching, you know, the work that Ursula and I have been doing, looking online about, because Ursula probably knows this very well, and so just me trying to familiarize myself with it. The provincial government is very good at advertising the granting they're doing for libraries, but they're always one-time grants. And they appear to be these one-time grants that are meant to open the doors for new programs, new services, but then there's no follow-up with how to fund the maintenance of those wonderful new programs. So I do think that, I mean, I'm fairly certain that the province understands what's happening here, and I do think that they're trying to, you know, appease folks to some degree by doing these one time, but that's not that's not very helpful, and that's what that was.
So Ursula, was it used? Because I remember there was some reluctance to use it.
So Councillor Blissett through the mayor. So as Charlotte indicated, the provincial enhancement grant, which was a really significant grant, it was a one-time grant with a stipulation that it be used in a 3-year period. And so the library board, looking at that, and there was no assurance that there would be any change to the provincial ongoing funding that they provide, operational funding, which it appears is the case. So the library board decided that it would not be prudent, it would not be fiscally responsible to use that money to cover ongoing operating costs. And so it was funded so the funds were used for a number of projects that were associated with with a short-term project. So for example, we did use a portion of that money to create an IT infrastructure reserve so that we could move from prior to this, we had been leasing our IT, the computers and everything that the staff use, because of course that was cheaper on a year-by-year basis, but cumulatively, it meant that the IT was actually substantially more expensive because we were paying leasing charges, not just purchasing outright. So we used a portion of the grant to create that IT infrastructure reserve. So that helped us save quite a bit of money in leasing costs. We also used it to help enhance our collections. Again, that goes back to what I was saying in my presentation. And then we also did do some short-term projects to help support activities over the past year. So working on developing Indigenous relations, all of that.
So has that money been used up?
There is a small amount left that we can use in the beginning of 2026 because, of course, the provincial government's fiscal cycle is April through March, whereas ours is January through December. But yes, it's going to be used up by then.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. So Ursula, just so I'm clear, in your budget for 2026, you're looking for just over $1 million in funding between the city and the RDEK. Does that include? I guess my question is, does that get us back to the level of service we were at before you had to start making cuts? Or is that to sustain the level of service that you're at right now?
So Councillor Peabody through the mayor, this amount is to maintain the level of service that we are at this moment. It would not restore the services that we had to cut in May.
Okay, and then to go back to the level of service that you're at before then, how much extra funding would you need? Is that the $39,000 that we're talking about, or significantly more?
Significantly more.
Yeah. Do you have that number or a guesstimate?
So I believe, and again, this is really coming in the way of a guesstimate because Charlotte and I talked about this, would it have been in August, I think?
Yeah.
But it would be probably in excess of $80,000.
$80,000. Okay. And right now we're looking at about an extra $100,000 compared to over what we did last year. Like, guess roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Peabody through the mayor, the increase right now from the city
Yeah.
is about $16,000.
16,000.
16,000, and then if Ursula, Ursula's asking for another 39.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's only a 16,000, it's 2%. It's
Oh,
2% on $764,000, which is about $15,998.
Okay. So, sorry. So when I look at the budget, and you see like grants in the core city of Cranbrook /RDEK, and you look at like for 2025, I guess 2026, it says 1,140,385. And I'm assuming, 80% of that's from the city and then 20% is from the RDK, is that correct?
Councillor Peabody, so the 955,868,
Yeah.
that is the total of the regional district and the city.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to pick your brain there.
Good. Yeah. I guess a couple of comments. It's interesting, Ursula, at the start of your presentation, what was it, 18 something, the Library Act, or you're right, so that, everybody had access to knowledge regardless of background or origin, whatever. And that's the provincial government that established that, obviously, right? Yeah, and I find it really interesting that, in looking at this year's budget, when you look at the grants, again, they're paying 10% of what the city is. So, I mean, over time, this provincial government makes this declaration, and over time, they've got a 10% share in it now. And nothing's increased. When was the last time there was an increase in their funding? How long has it been, Ursula? Because it's been locked in 102,000 for ever, not ever, but years, right?
So Mayor Price, I actually did go back to try and find out when the last time was that the provincial government actually increased its basic per capita grant, because it's added other grants on, but I wanted to go back and look at just the basic per capita grant.
Yeah.
Which is no longer a per capita grant at this stage. But in looking back, it looks like the last time that they had made a change to that rate was in the 1990s.
So, that's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. I mean, it's just beyond ridiculous. So, and I appreciate, and costs are going up. We're doing, in every department and everything, all of our types of business. Charlotte, I guess, means of funding, because, our funding basically comes out of the general fund, taxation. And that's the killer for us, right? I mean, it's out of the general fund. Is there any other method or means that we could fund the library outside of service fees? Is there, I appreciate, they look at the school and the hospital and whatnot, we pay a, separate tax there, or it doesn't show up in it, of course, in our general fund. Is there any means that we could do that, or even the province should be looking at? They don't want to pay. Find another means to make it easier for local government rather than to have to dip into the general fund. That's the killer.
Mayor Price, not that I'm aware of, and our opportunities for raising revenue are limited as well, fees and taxes, and we would not fund the library through the water fund, the sewer fund, the sanitary or the solid waste fund. So it's taxes. And, for us, I mean, if we raised fees at the Rex, at Western Financial Place, that would relieve the tax burden, which might allow council to redirect some taxes to the library. But it's taxes. It comes down to taxes.
So we have to look at that in the future, because this isn't sustainable, going on. We'll make a decision this year, but certainly I think our next council, one of the next council's mandates is to have a look at the library situation and find a more sustainable means of funding, for sure. And I appreciate where the province, and you're spot on, Ursula, where the one-time funding, and it's used for this. So, I've seen organizations where there's one-time funding said, sorry, but no thanks. And then people say to them, well, you turned down free money. Some of that one-time funding isn't free money because, it's for a program, it's for something. Now, how do you sustain that? Right? You need staffing, you need operational support going down the road. So really that puts you at a deficit, in your operations going forward. So, That's the killer, and that's the government's, senior government's way of doing things. They throw you a little cookie here, but it's, you gotta be careful what you're eating, right? Because there could be a real cost to that down the road, so I appreciate that. Councillor Steske.
Yeah, just a quick comment and then a question. So we'll be dealing with grants a little later on in the meeting here. And of course, we reduced the amount of grant money that we were going to give out by $67,656 this year, and kept it at 2024 levels. So there might be a little bit of money available there in that 67,000 that we didn't allocate to grants. In terms of fees, I know one of the decisions the board made was to increase the number of the fees at the library last year to help cover the deficit. So what are you now paying for at the library? What kind of, you don't have to give the fees per page, but what are the various services that you now pay for at the library?
So Councillor Steske through the mayor. As I mentioned in the presentation, the items that we can charge fees for legally. So there is under the Library Act, there's regulations that define free basic library service. So that excludes the vast majority of the activities that we engage in. So the places where we can charge fees are for things such as printing, photocopying, and faxing. And we raise those fees to be in line with what is being charged elsewhere in the community. And then we also can charge fees for the lost and damaged material processing and recovery. So somebody borrows an item and they lose it or they damage it, we can charge them for the cost of the item plus a processing fee to help offset the costs that it cost us to get that item shelf ready and, the tape, the barcodes and all of that sort of thing. And then there are a couple of programs that we operate on a cost recovery basis. That is the participants pay for the supplies because they are supplies that are consumable, so they're going to be taking them home. And so for that, we charge on a cost recovery. But again, we can't use those fees to generate revenue. We can only use it for cost recovery.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. This would only be, one small strategy, but because the library is located downtown, if we had any external beautification projects at the library, could we use the downtown parking reserve to assist with the costs of those beautification projects?
Councillor Ray through the mayor, I would have to look into that.
And it would only be a small portion of the budget, but I just wonder, we're looking for strategies to improve our sustainability. So that might be one small strategy. And then I know there was a significant advocacy push for this year's UBCM around provincial library funding. And we were supportive of that in terms of meeting with the relevant minister and attending the event that the Library Association held. But I'm just wondering, again, as part of our budget process, if Mayor and Council might want to consider writing a letter to the minister responsible to just reiterate that we feel they need to, consider at least a modest increase to their funding, because of course, by keeping it flat all these years, it really means it's been a pretty significant decrease.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Anything further, Council? Councillor Peabody.
My apologies to CFO Osborne. I had last year's request and this year's request both open. So the math I was looking at was last year's, which is like $100,000 more. So the last year request for 2026, like when they do the 5-year budget, they're hoping to get 912,000, and now they're asking for 780. So significantly less than what you were requesting last year. between like 2020, like when you project 5 years, you were projecting to hope for 912,000 from the city. And now we're at 780.
So Councillor Peabody through the mayor, that amount, again, it shows the combined total for the city and the regional district. So at least that's how the budget that was presented.
Yeah.
to-
Well, actually, on the
the city.
2020, the 2025 budget, your 2026 projection was over $1 million. And then 20% of that was 912 is what was projecting. So yeah, no, it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just for information. But it's interesting that with the cuts that you've made, like you're able to run the library with significantly less funding. But yeah, just leave it.
Yeah. Councillor Peabody, I will also apologize because when I said $955,000, I'm looking at the 2025 numbers. So in your package for council for 2026, it's 975,000. And that does include both the regional district and the city. And yes, I don't want to comment on the numbers because I don't have them in front of me relative to last year. But of course, the library board required to make significant reductions due to the funding decisions last year. So yeah, I'm sorry, Councillor Peabody, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I'm just confusing everyone, so we'll just drop it. But yeah, anyways, we'll leave it there.
Yeah, just a point there on that. What I'm saying too is that, there's a significant difference in the transfer from reserves. Last year, there was 179,000. This year's only 68,000. Next year, 16, then there's nothing. So we can sort of relate to that. You're operating, you're depleting your reserves to operate. So even when you look at your bottom line numbers at the end of the day, once you get into detail, you can see as we're moving forward, you're getting into a much more critical situation because you're drawing down on those reserves to a level you can't even fund from them. So again, I think that the new council coming in, through finance and through the CAO, that has to be something I think that council sits down at the start of the year and looks at ways of increasing support or working with the library to help alleviate that strain. Or it's not going to be sustainable the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, if something doesn't change.
Council through Mayor Price. So yeah, I think that sort of that concludes the presentation for the library. What I'll leave you with is that to continue operating at prior year at 2025 levels, additional funding of 39,000 will be required. There will be some offset of that, hopefully, with respect to the IT, and I will be bringing back some information from IT to a future council meeting where we would let council know how much that $39,000 would be reduced through the IT support, realistically be reduced through IT support in 2026. But without additional funding, additional service cuts will be required.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ursula. Again, great presentation. And thank you so much for the level of service you provide.
So I'll just let Ursula get organized. And then next up is Staff Sergeant Graham. And joining him will be Amanda Peters. She is here to respond to any questions that you may have relating to the municipal employee side of the conversation.
Welcome, Barry. Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Price, councillors, staff, members of the general public. Thanks for the opportunity to present our request for to increase the establishment at Cranbrook RCMP. I'll, for the benefit of anybody who hasn't read our submission, I'll try and pick out some key points and answer any questions, fill in the blanks after. But basically, the request identifies a need to review Cranbrook Municipal member resources in the current service delivery model in order to address rising community safety challenges, ensure effective law enforcement, and maintain public confidence. We're seeking council's approval to increase detachment resources in support of a crime reduction unit. So the option one is that council approve the request to increase the establishment of 2 FTE positions to create a street crime unit. And this is our preferred option, recommended option, and otherwise not go with an increase, which may require a reduction in current delivery service through consultation with their Southeast District RCMP. Basically, it's Cranbrook's growing, challenges are increasing, we're a hub community, expanded responsibilities. It's really getting difficult to stay on top of all the increased demands, mental health files, substance abuse files, community patrols, especially with our bylaw department with encampments, and we have only, and appreciate everything that we've been supported with to date. The 4 unfunded positions have helped us offset a lot considerable resource challenges and the roller coaster of absences. But we really, there has been no funded increase regular members since 2011. We got ahead again with the support of Mayor and Council with the watch clerks to try and offset some of the admin to make better use to get our members on the road. And we've faced challenges from the admin of body-worn cameras, for example, to take us back a step on that. But we're seeing an upward trend in calls for service and police files, 8% increase over 2024. Our pop to pop ratio, like 1 to 843 people, and that may not seem so bad, except when you look at how many members we have on a given shift on our 30-year minimums. You're looking at one person in a municipality policing, or one constable policing 7,000 people. It's no different than some challenges by other agencies. Our crime severity index, where we were below, is above. We've had to run our mental health liaison position vacant for the last few years. We just needed the body at emergency calls. Uniform is the core. We have 16 municipally funded frontline member positions. That's 1 corporal, 3 constables per shift, and that's optimal. That's regardless of training, leave, medical absences. It's really hard with the current staffing levels to maintain the responsibility, the community's need for emergency help and follow-up investigation. With the supervisors drawn into the investigative load, it creates a domino effect. Everyone else has to pick up some of the supervisory challenges, and it's felt hardest at the front. I'm not gonna lie on that one, but it reverberates through the rest of the detachment. We're doing our best to try and keep our members trained up in everything from crisis de-escalation, how to deal with some of our challenging populations that are growing. We lack a dedicated road safety member, for example. We have a lot of members that, a few in particular, that are really, really good traffic-wise, and we have them go into other complaints that they could be doing a lot to make the roads safer as well. Our hotspot proactive patrols, right now we're relying on provincial funding, the C-STEP funding, to have the bulk of that done, but we can't guarantee that'll be there every year, and it's not a long-term solution to what we should be doing ourselves here and just can't seem to get to. I'll give you a quick overview of our GI unit, General Investigation Section. It's the plainclothes members for the most part. We have 3 constables, 1 corporal supervisor, and a community policing constable that fall under that with the enhanced response unit mandate. And they're tasked with the higher severity and complex files like serious sex crimes, serious assaults, drug offenses, and generally more cumbersome and complex major crime investigations within the municipality. Court thresholds getting higher, the expectations there, the timeliness of submissions that we had to meet resolution for the participants. It's tying people to computers more and more. The community policing constable, done fantastic work again with the schools, with the community engagement coordinator. I can't say enough about the increased profile that we've gotten, and it's given the community a better idea of what goes on behind the doors there. It's a high-risk job, physically, psychologically. It takes a toll on people, and as one person looks after themselves, the pressure goes to the other people. It's not like building a house where, okay, we'll put off this wing or we'll put off the electrical. The same amount of 911 calls are still coming in, the same expectation, the same, but it's displaced on 3 people and 2 people, and it's more and more challenging. We're a young detachment, thankfully, and we're seeing more and more family-related absences. And I mean, that is a human right, but it creates absences, restrictions and absences up to 18 months, depending on who, depending on sharing with your spouse. We wish everybody well there, but it is an impact on our resources and growing over our medical absences. And we've lost members for large amount of time due to psychological stress and burnout. Some of them, it's not that one single event, it's the culmination of the stress and night shift after night shift, and that feeling of hopelessness when you come into your block with so many tasks that you have to follow up on, so many victims that need resolution, and you're up 10% in your task list. It's daunting. So the cumulative effect we don't speak to as often as well. Losing resources, there's always that concern that we'll collapse. Like, why would you come in to be the only person policing a town of 21,000 people? So the solution, or one of the solutions to get us where we need to go, and listening to the community. We know from the recent surveys and feedback what the importance is: street level drug activity, property crime, homelessness. These are things that we do our best to get our GI unit into, but again, they're tied into some of the long-standing investigations and the complicated follow-up. So I will go through these point by point of what a street crime reduction unit would help us accomplish. So increased investigational capacity to address real-time crime trends and events, targeted enforcement based on crime trends, investigations, and crime analysis. Provide increased police presence in hotspot areas, peak times, vehicle, foot and bike patrol as a crime deterrent as well. Overt and covert projects, proactively targeting street level drug offenders, repeat offenders, property crime offenders, assisting the front line. This is an important one in any capacity required, including attending high priority calls for service and sometimes taking routine calls when the resources are low, which we have our policies regarding how many people should be going to certain calls of violence and stuff. And it can be time consuming. If somebody can step in, meet that physical backup demand, and then move on to their priority stuff, it makes good use of our time. But the biggest thing here is that it increases our surge capacity. So when that should reduce, if not eliminate, our need for out of region overtime people. We're scaling back on that presently to the point that we have shifted all of our upcoming overtime shifts that people coming in and the travel related to it to that CSIP funding. We were successful in getting $327,000 in funding, and we want to make sure we use every bit of it. And the hope is that we'll be able to transition away from that in a municipal demand. And the other things that, like we talked about, the road safety, curfew checks on individuals with court-ordered conditions. There are people that are under strict court conditions that aren't fully accountable. when we get out sometimes and you realize someone hasn't been checked in a month and they moved and they've been doing whatever they want, this gives us the ability to get ahead of it, and it should help reduce our crime patterns. Large community events, it's easier to have that presence. Like I said, it'll conduct traffic enforcement initiatives and education in bylaw infraction. We're hoping that we can increase our enforcement of after hours in support of the bylaw department. So the costs, it's like 268,344 when you even factoring in the 10% federal cost share. So that's a 0.70 percent tax increase per member. So the total cost of two would be 536,688. That's a 1.4% tax increase, which we know is not great at any time that you're coming to present, but it's the reality. Again, we haven't had a funded increase since 2011. There's a one-time startup fee of 10,000 per member as well. The reality is we do return funds as much as 1.1 million in a year. We'd rather spend those salary dollars locally, but we know that we'll have those fluctuations. With more people, there should be less burnout. There should be a domino effect or a cascading effect, I guess, not domino effect with that, which will help the overall product. If approved, it would take some time to get those positions in place. So for 2026, we estimate it would cost 179,000 with the full cost realized in the 2027 budget year. And option two, which is not preferred, but at some point there has to be a give. The reduction of hotspot and community patrols. We have to consider removal of the community policing constable position and reallocating the position back to two frontline general duty. No choice but to extend the vacancy in the mental health liaison position. Reduction in general investigation section members to increase the frontline policing resources. We've had to tap into that for a shift, a block, a month deployment at a time, but it limits our undercover projects. It limits our proactive drug activity overall, and those complicated files. It's the timelines are it's not great when we have to draw from that resource. We have to prioritize core services and emergency calls. It's difficult, and we don't take it lightly when we talk about the potential service delivery, but something has to give eventually, and it's not the most positive of outcomes, but that's the reality.
Thank you very much, Barry. Councillor Graham, start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. 5 years ago, we've heard this story. I remember when Councillor Hudak was here. Nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed. I can tell you right off, I am not in favor of this. I would like to see this proposal when we can show that we have 26 officers on for at least a year. We haven't been able to do that. We have 5 years of history, and it goes back even further of 22. As you know, we're chatting, and I've been pushing hard to cut to 22 members because we need something different, and this is not an alternative. This gets us more of the same, which is nothing. People are feeling more unsafe in Cranbrook than ever before. We saw that in the survey. So on one hand, the survey said, like that, eh? The survey says they like the RCMP, but on the other hand, they feel more unsafe, and there's no go zones in Cranbrook now. So they like the RCMP at 22 members. That's what we've had for enough time that we haven't had a full complement. So I think it's a bit premature to be asking for more members when we can't be provided a full complement. And this has nothing to do with yourself. This is the RCMP itself and the system. The fact that we've spent $1 million in overtime is absolutely ludicrous because they're supposed to provide us 26 members. So if you hired a contractor to fix your house and they quoted you 10 hours at $100 an hour, you get the bill and it is 10 hours at $200 an hour. Are you going to hire that contractor? Are you going to pay the bill? You're going to be like, no, this is what you quoted us. We should not be paying a dime over regular time. And the RCMP itself should be paying that overtime additional costs, because that affects our bottom line. And we have a contracted service with them. I have a few notes here, if you don't mind indulging me, council. So I think that those are things that we have to look at, is that this is not an outside the box idea. This is just an easy way of saying, hey, throw us 2 more members, fund it. They probably won't show up because we can't provide the 26 anyway. So I'm not in favor of that. I think we need to look at ways of, what does an RCMP officer actually need to do? Do we need an RCMP officer to be a community liaison, or could that maybe be a higher level bylaw officer that can be a community liaison officer and going into the schools? Could we look at some kind of like an apprenticeship program in a way where you have bylaw or community policing and you have 1 RCMP member with a group? So now you have a unit of 3. One's a journeyman RCMP, 2 are bylaw, and they're going out and dealing with some of the foot patrols or dealing with this, where you have some more capacity for substantially less money. So like, I think there's some ways that we can look outside the box and propose ideas. Now, I'm quite certain that proposing 22 members, it has to get signed off on by the feds, and the province won't happen. But it definitely sends a very strong message that Cranbrook is not excited about where we are in policing, because we have these needs and the RCMP can't meet the needs, just like they can't in majority of communities throughout the Kootenays that I talk to and throughout the province that we see at UBCM. So something has to change systematically. And we're already looking at a $600,000 increase in the RCMP budget this year for the contract, and to make up some other costs of where we were, what's the word, Charlotte? We were just kind of like massaging, or we were just kind of massaging in these hard costs for the watch clerk. So we're catching up on that, and I feel we've been very progressive in providing watch clerks to alleviate some of the paperwork for our current members. So those are big concerns that I see, and I think there needs to be ways that we can think outside the box and provide a Cranbrook-centric solution. And I really wish that your presentation today would have been, hey, here's something outside the box. Here's something that we might be able to make work here, and this is how we might do it. Rather than, we'll fund 2 more members when we can't even get the 26 that we pay for now. So that is something that I have very big concerns on, and I am ringing bells at a higher level. Like on Monday, we have a call, myself, the mayor, and the CAO have a call with Assistant Commissioner Brewer to talk specifically about these things, because we've met with him before, and I feel that if we don't keep poking up, nothing's going to happen. And if we're seeing more population around Cranbrook or in Cranbrook Core and around, at what point does Cranbrook need an inspector? When should we be looking to have an inspector run the detachment as a commissioned officer? And I think that also might bring some different perspective to the unit. When does that happen, and how do we have those conversations?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. A lot of notes and a lot to keep track of. And I appreciate the outside the box comment. I believe that was our attempt, was instead of saying give us 2 more general duty members, is give us the crime reduction part. So we are trying to do that. And the inspector, I respect for the organization and the at all ranks, but it doesn't change from substantially in the training and the knowledge base and the application. There's certainly more gusto the higher rank you go, and I wouldn't be opposed to having an inspector here, other than it puts me out of a job, and that's fine. It's not about me. There are things that we have restrictions on how we can apply, like the journeyman, great idea, and I'm open to looking at things till RoboCop and drones come in to replace the physical response. Like we do have our policies and procedures, and we're working with bylaw. We're trying to find that, the watch clerk angle for the admin, and find those civilian ways of dealing with some of the pressures. But they keep growing. And the community policing, can it be a bylaw person? There are aspects that we can transition over for sure. We're trying to build up our connection with the community, and that really helps. You want a police officer joining 15 years from now, be involved in the community and make that difference. I myself was inspired by the Boy Scout leaders and the hockey coaches, members that were doing it. And it's good. It's good for the community. You can actually give those experienced lectures as opposed to, I'm reading from a book and I've never experienced this. So there's pros and cons to it, but certainly can't write it off. Reducing the 22, that means you're getting 16. Like it's counterproductive to drop the number. I mean, drop budget for 22 if you think we're going to have it. But the conversation has to talk about, are we talking about finances here and the inability? Because we return significant money over the years, with the exception, I do have to correct you, that in 2023-24, we had all 26 contractual members show up to work, plus all 4 unfunded positions showing up to work. Plus we had 2 members who couldn't sell their house and they were showing up to work. So we were actually 6 over the budget at one point in time. Now we had accrued slippage throughout the year and that became problematic toward the end, but we have seen it. And in that situation, we assign members out to other detachments to lower our salary costs. When you look at the $1 million in overtime, dollar for dollar, overtime actually almost exactly matches the salary, the fully encumbered cost salary of a constable, because on overtime you're paying just a salary. You're not paying the benefits. You're not paying all the rest of the fees that come into it. So literally, like for example, if we were to drop from 26 people, if I decided that we're going to run a vacancy and we're going to fill up those hours with overtime, it almost levels out. So it's alarming when you look at $1 million on a $480,000 budget. Any overtime is a failure in your human resources. We don't want to have to spend on overtime. It's not efficient paying somebody to travel here and paying them their flights and their hotels and stuff. We would prefer to buy local, and if we could have filled those gaps locally, we would have. But it's really hard to convince people to come in on their days off when, like I said, they left their last block 10% more file load that there's no one swooping in to pick up. So reducing the actual numbers means you're only getting a percentage of those numbers. And when I spoke to it earlier, we're looking at operational collapse. I wouldn't work under those circumstances, and I can't expect anybody else to do it. It's a dangerous job that only certain people will do. We're the ones running into things. And I say we, though I'm running to typewriters these days, or keyboards, but we're running into things while people are running the other way. We're having to adapt to every different safety threat out there, every different threat to your mental health, and you realize after the fact when you seize the gun from the guy you arrested, it's like that could have been used on me. I can't tell you how devastating that is on our members. 3 of our members in medical absences right now, either part of it or in their history, have dealt with significant weapons complaints. And my job is to protect them and give them a safe place to come back to. And the notion that we could reduce to 22 people doesn't give that. I'm sorry. It's a difficult one to absorb. And like we can go down the road of the finances, but when you speak to the are we getting 26 members? Like point in time right now, we have 3 people on long-term medical absences, one of which the RCMP has supported us for replacement. So we're down 2. And with the replacements in here working, we have 2 people on restricted duties that are being paid for by the province, but the restricted duties, they are absorbing significant investigative tasks. Like they're not skipping a beat in what they're helping. We have 1 member is on a reduced hour work position. So it's a 0.6 FTE. So that's down 0.4. We have 1 person right now on a parental absence, and that person is returning in March. And 1 person on an assignment that That's the only one that the city of Cranbrook is paying for. But the totality of that is operational absence complete is 4.4 FTE, which is pretty much the 4 unfunded positions that we asked for. So we're not that far off the mark, and we have 2 people on restricted duties that are doing police tasks. So we are a lot closer. I just need to be asked the question, and I appreciate that, to the obligation than one would think. And over the next coming months, we're going to see one of the restricted duty members transition to parental absence, one of the reassigned members, parental absence, another member to parental absence, and one returning, which will put us at, what's that? I should have highlighted. So yeah, like that's 7.4 operational loss, but all paid by the province. We have one surplus, one medically backfilled additional provincial position in restricted duties that's also helping, like the other 2 municipal ones. Our IDENT position right now, the forensic identification specialist, we have a vacancy, soft vacancy, medical absence in the municipal one. So the provincial position is covering the municipality. So the province is actually doing things with respect to supporting operations. I mentioned the C-STEP funding. That's $327,000 that we submitted for, and hoping to spend the entirety of it. We've had some pretty detailed conversations with district of late for this year. Is the right one? So we've to date, 2/3 of the way through our fiscal year, $237,767.66 paid for by provincial funding for what should be municipal costs. This includes the hotspot patrols with C-STEP, the member-involved shooting from last February. That file was a revoy offender, and we were able to get funding within that fiscal year, and they paid for the repairs of one of the damaged municipal police cars this year for almost $29,000. Site funding, that was the violence previous to C-STEP. We had $25,000 in that to date, sorry. Yeah, and like I said, we're transitioning to the C-STEP funding model. We just put in another request for proceeds of crime application for $15,000 in different things. And yeah, sorry, long answer. I don't know if I covered everything that you asked, but we're not opposed to any other solution. Like, we don't have it. We're trying to do the best with the staff that we have. We have a fantastic group of people. We're hoping to make it a safer place for the people that are off to come back. And the reality is some may not come back. And once we hit the 1-year mark for 2 of our members in March, we'll be able to put in a request to have those backfilled. District has supported us to beyond the medical surplus to have an extra position. Once we get our recruit in next recruit in January, we're hoping that there will be another position filled. We just found out one of our members, just like 2 years ago, his replacement has arrived, and he hasn't been able to sell his house and move. So we, as disappointing as that is for him, we have another good member for the foreseeable future. So the reality is we just need more people. And I know it sounds like the same song. We tried to change the tune by going with the crime reduction over just topping up general duty. It's the costs are going up. Our salary is only going up 3.5% a year. You know, I appreciate it. I'm happy the fact that I still have a job, but there's other costs outside our control, and I get it. Everybody's concerned. You know how you approach the situation. There's things outside our control, but what's in our control? And I'm hoping that, you know, there's a lot of pressure financially. I'm not coming in thinking that this is Brewster's Millions and everybody's looking to, okay, where can we throw out the money? But this is important. It's important as well as to the community, it's important to our team to know that they're supported. It's it's a difficult sell to inspire people to come in and do things beyond what we can reasonably expect in the face of, well, you're going to have to do even more with less. It's daunting. I'm not going to lie. I appreciate that's a discussion. That's a challenge for municipality. And it's sometimes it's a lot to ask, but we don't come in with this ask lightly. Thank you.
Yeah, just a supplemental on that, and I think the key behind this is it's not. I'm speaking for myself here right now. It isn't budget driven. It's the product we're given driven. Like I don't see where this is. We don't have what we've been promised. So why am I going to give more money for something that can't be delivered? And I think where we need to address this is maybe working with yourself and council, as the RCMP maybe needs to redo how they look at backfill. Maybe it should be after 6 months they send backfill officers. Maybe they need an officer pool. Like, with the amount of call volumes that are happening now is a lot different probably when they set backfill levels 30 years ago. So what can we do to try and get the force to look and reevaluate on how they deliver their contract? And I think that's the whole key behind this, is we need to see them change their contract delivery and how they can backfill, because being down 7.5 operational right now isn't that doesn't help anybody with anything, or make it sound like, hey, I want to invest more in this product. So it's not about the dollar fact. Like, I don't want you to give any money back, but the reality is you do. So it's like, well, what can we do to get more presence on the ground? And that's ultimately what I'm looking for. Is how do we get more presence on the ground, whether it's police or whether it's bylaw? Because that's what people want to see, because that brings surety, that brings security. So I think like that's where I'm pushing for, but we need to make some kind of statements where upstairs in the organization is like, this isn't working. And honestly, I think they're probably going to pull out of contract policing. I think you'll see the RCMP pull out of contract policing just because of these issues that are arising, and they can't meet the demand. When Depot has a batch of graduates and only 3 come to British Columbia, that tells me we're not going to be able to fill these vacancies anytime soon. So it's not about the detachment here or the level of work that we're getting out of the officers here, because they are definitely working and being overworked. It's a bigger issue than that. And it's like, how can we as a council work with yourself to push up some ideas to say, we need this fixed because this is not working? Because emergency services with fire and police, Charlotte, is that 40% of our budget, roughly 35% of our budget? Like, yourself and fire are the biggest part of our budget. So it does require some extra time and conversation. And it's like, how can we fix this problem? Because the citizens deserve the product that they pay for, and we're just trying to fight for that. So that's where I'm coming from. And conveniently, we have a line to Brewer at this point. So it's like we have a line to somebody who might be able to change something for us. So that's the rationale behind it. And as you can tell, I dig a lot into policing and ways that we can try and provide a better product. It's not a reflection on the detachment.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to that as well, because it is you want the message out there. I'm not going to get tied into much of the politics for my own career preservation, but to have the conversation is great, and that is the reality of when we pitched the unfunded positions. And I'll be honest, without those positions that you supported us and trusted us with, we would have hit operational collapse. So 4.4 loss plus 2 FTE restricted right now off of 26 means 18. And that takes a nosedive everywhere. It's not just, a simple number. It drives up the demands exponentially. And core to the unfunded pitch was, give us more people, give us control over resources. So to have more people right now, almost dollar for dollar, like we are projected as of P7, and I think it's pretty much similar for P8, to return a surplus of $532,000 specific to pay. That's pay. That's the two members right there. You go up two more members, the overtime, $1 million is a lot, but it's over the 480,000 that's budgeted, so it's 500,000. So if you were to give us two more members and we were able to completely abandon this out of region overtime thing, it doesn't cost the city anymore. There's so many ways. I know you talk about it's not the finances, but we still talk about investing in the same thing. It comes down to numbers. We don't want to be that heavy impact on the taxpayer. You could add these two members on, and I don't want to risk manage. That word is a challenging one. There's a lot of trust in it, but you could do that at the same level and not increase the taxes. It gives us that opportunity. We want, like I said, we want to spend our salary dollars. We just know statistically we're going to have absences. The bulk of our absences a couple months from now are going to be parental leave. It's not the medical one. I think we've made significant improvements in providing the support for our members. Having the support increase with the municipal employees has helped them, and we're not as vulnerable anymore. And we always have that. If we like I said the last time or the other few times, that the unlikely landing over water, and we're overstaffed, and we're heading toward the budget issue, the impact of the city we don't want to have. There's always going to be someone in need, and I mean that. Creston needed the members when we sent them. Golden may have collapsed on their own without our ability to send members when we did 2 years ago. Maybe that's the out of the box thing, is to add the members and don't budget for it. And we can sit down daily and talk about finances. I know, I'm sorry, Charlotte.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
but-
we're going to go around the table anyways here. We'll go to council. Pop up here.
Thank you. Wow. I agree with Councillor Graham. I think, and it's not on you, Barry, but I think the system is just not working. And no matter how much money we throw at it, past, present, or future, it's the system that has to be evaluated and changed. And it's not just Cranbrook, it's broader. Quick question, Charlotte or Amanda. Thanks for being here, Amanda. What are we paying right now, total budget for the watch clerks annually? Ballpark? We have 4 watch clerks. Okay, 4 watch clerks. So, and while we're waiting for that, and that was the rationale we had a number of years ago. To get the work done, council needed to tax fund for these watch clerks, which is great, and it relieves all the paperwork burden, so the members can get out there and get the work done. Okay, and now we did all that, and you're coming back to us now and basically saying, system or no system, we're still not able to get the work done. So with all your numbers and everything else, Charlotte, did you have that?
With benefits, it's about 390.
Okay, $400,000. So, so we're still not getting the work done. And I mean, I appreciate all your numbers, Barry, but I'd like to see those on paper and understand the rationale behind all that. And I don't know if throwing more money at this is really going to solve anything. It's the system that bothers me. The other interesting thing was we did the council and senior staff were a delegation to the regional district a while back, making the case, as you said right at the beginning of your presentation, we're a hub city, we're a hub community for the regional district. And with that brings residents, various from around the regional district, that end up locating here in Cranbrook. So that compelling argument discussion we had with the regional district board allowed us to get regional district funding for Marcel, our outreach coordinator, and a number of other funding pieces, so that we could utilize regional district money to help us offset some of our funding. So maybe in this new metrics we can work out, the regional district, I know they have rural RCMP members, but what about using that same model with the regional district, especially, well, the regional district in general, saying like the social outreach worker that we have to deal with the regional hub issue for our in-city challenges, we also want the regional district to give us some regional hub funding to deal with our in-city challenges because we're the hub community. I'm throwing it out there because that's just going to be more challenges with a challenging system, but it might be another funding source. So I'm just thinking we might be just throwing more money after something that's not going to have any solutions.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Sorry, yours.
Oh, you respond,
yeah.
certainly.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I left out a very important piece of the provincial support. We submitted a business case about a month ago to district requesting support to go to the province to create a provincially funded mental health liaison position and an extra general duty position for the province, for the provincial area, plus an extra public servant to add to our detachment. And out of all the business cases from Southeast District, ours was ranked #1. So ours will go to the province. I can't say it'll be timely or it'll be successful, you know, but we are looking at that angle as well. I miss policing. I miss thinking like a police officer, but we are spending so much time looking at all these angles and appreciate the fact that you are as well. You know, it's not just one person's job. It's not just one government's job. We want to be able to work together on all these things, and throwing money at something doesn't work. Throwing resources, a little different. And that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. It sure is a complicated system, hey? Like every time we have these presentations, I think, yep, I understand it now, and then I sort of fades. I feel like we need some infographics, right, about the 26 and the 4, and we're kind of sitting at 22, right? And then, yeah, like it is a complicated system. And it's a very big ship, and we all know like it is hard to turn big, gigantic ships. So it's a challenge for sure. What is the RCMP's fiscal year?
So April 1st to March 31st.
Yeah, because we were kind of talking 25, 26, and we're a calendar year kind of thing. So anyways, another little complexity that we have to deal with. So if I talk in city terms for 2025, and maybe I'll direct it to our CFO, what are we projecting a surplus for RCMP expenses for what we call 2025?
Councillor Ray through the mayor. So for 2025, we will be absorbing the deficit that was at March 31st, 2025. And there are some accruals and various things that can be done to try to offset that deficit. Because the surplus that is projected for March 31st, 2026 won't hit our books until 2026. So it's so that piece is challenging, is trying to offset all of that. And yeah, so yeah.
What's the projected surplus for 2026? March 2026.
I'm just going to see if Charlene's going to text me on that. I think it's somewhere like thank you, Amanda. 316,903. But just on that, yep, says Charlene. So a few years ago, when we decided to risk manage, when I talked to council in November, the projected surplus was $314,000 or something. And within a few periods, we were down to like $40,000 surplus. And then I can't remember if that's the one that completely reversed, but so right after we agreed to, or right after council directed us to risk manage, and that was for 2024, we saw huge turnaround in the financial statements. So I am confident in the financial statements when I get the adjusted year-end financial statements in June or July.
So, and what was the 2025 March deficit?
Councillor Ray, I believe it was 268,000 or 265, something like that.
Okay.
Yes, Charlene.
And then could we just have a reminder on the additional municipal resources that council's approved? So we've talked about the 4 watch clerks, but Amanda maybe can refresh my memory, or whoever wants to, on the other new resources in an effort, as Councillor Graham said, to be progressive and try to be helpful and manage the workload.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Ray. So we did have the 4 watch clerk positions. One of those positions was born out of the collapse of a record supervisor position. So some of those funds went into the watch clerks. We also had the community engagement coordinator position. That was an addition through the 2024 budget, I believe. We also had the records lead position, which was an addition in 2024, and that came through a reduction of janitorial services by 50%. So some of the funds went to the records lead position, as well as we've had a reallocation of funds to create the assistant manager of police support services and bylaw.
Could I speak to the
Certainly, Barry.
projections and stuff too? And again, as you said, complicated. Things are changing all the time. When I mentioned earlier about the C-STEP funding, that we're transitioning to that as being the sole overtime and associated travel. So at this point, as a P8, so 2/3 of the way through the year, we're at $131,557 over our year budget for overtime. Prorated to 90%, because you got to remember at the bottom, there's 10% federal injection of funds. Right now, at this point in time, we're 118,000 over. A lot of money. But just like the Odler and the Price is Right, our costs should drop off significantly right now. There's going to be still some overtime. There's people staying late working on files. There's going to be, the regular thing, but not this substantial amount of money through to the end of the year. We also are waiting for reconciliation of internal staffing. We keep those 4 provincial positions fully staffed all the time. One of our members in a provincial position has been acting in a municipal supervisor position, which means that it's left his position vacant. I can't remember exactly if that's like a 0.5 FTE or something like that, but that's half of a year's salary, like the equivalent. So we are far more optimistic as we go toward the end of the fiscal year that these things will increase, and that does not give much comfort to finance. But we're seeing those things turn around, the travel expenses, which are difficult to absorb as well, not just the overtime, but what's our travel to date? Yeah, significantly higher than the $40,000 budget, so we're 137,000 over right now, prorated at 90% to 123,000 actual over, and that should be pretty much non-existent for anymore. So you're not going to see 177 that we spent to date. You're not going to see another 90,000 on it. You may see another 10, 15,000 on it. So it's when the final numbers are in, it's going to look a lot better. We just have to get our stuff together between that complicated machine in-house. So it will be better.
Charlie, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Price. So the other thing that we shouldn't forget in this conversation is collective bargaining is, I'm not sure if they've commenced, but the collective agreement ended March 31st, 2025. We have received correspondence advising us that a 3.5% increase is likely, and that we should be setting those funds aside for retroactive pay. We received similar instructions for the last 2 collective agreements, and the amount that was actually required was higher than what we had set aside. We at that time happened to be able to absorb that because we had 2 years in a row of very significant increases, or surpluses rather. And I can only say, thank goodness we did, because, I mean, it does mean, unfortunately, on Barry's team, it means that there were not enough people showing up, but it, quite frankly, was very necessary in order for us to meet our obligations once the collective agreements were settled. So we're entering into something similar again, and collective bargaining, which is we completely support that. Just in meeting those financial obligations, our experience has been that becomes very challenging.
Thanks, Charlotte. Councillor Bissett?
Thank you. So, from what I understand, we haven't been experiencing 26 members on the ground. So if we increase the number to 28, like right now we're at 18, so we're going to go up to 20, maybe? Is that your hope?
That is,
Yeah.
my hope is that everybody's healthy and,
Sure.
but say that it seems to be roughly around 76% is that
Okay.
average of roadable. So you get more people, you can
Mhm.
get, and that was the whole point of the unfunded, was to get more
Yeah.
people so that your percentages hit for your
Sure.
funding.
And so part of, I think, our issue is our two systems. The city system that is well managed to say, okay, if we're saying we have 28 members, we're taxing for 28 members. But then we know we're never going to get 28 members. And yes, we've used that to pay for salary increases over the years. And that's good on an accounting point of view. But we need to do what actually gets more people on the ground. And that's what, when in listening to you, I'm like, okay, well, how do we get more people on the ground? And I think that's what you're trying to provide us with. We have an accounting problem. So we need to talk about that separately and how to do that. And we have a body problem, and then we have an accounting problem. And I think we're meshing those together. And I understand what you're doing is presenting a way to deal with staffing, and that's great. That's your job. Our job in this organization is to figure out how we fund this reasonably so that we're not banking millions of dollars in reserves. I understand that allows our accounting people to sleep at night, which is a good thing. However, we need to balance this. And I think this is a separate issue that maybe doesn't have to be talked about with you. You know what I mean? Other than that you give us the information on how many people are actually there. So I do understand asking for 28. And we did come forward before on our creative solutions and trying to help this problem with providing watch clerks. We tried that. We've been trying with bylaw again, but we still need actual RCMP. And I think the public wants actual RCMP. So I think we have to go with this. We just have to figure out as a city and the financial, how to make it so Charlotte can sleep at night and that we have enough money to cover this, but we aren't taxing to put millions in reserves. Okay, so I think that's our issue.
Thank you, Councillor Bissett. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Barry and maybe Amanda, just looking at how much the policing budget has increased historically. In the last 4 years, the budget's increased just, I think, maybe just under $3 million. I think it was, and from what I can see, like our expense for like salaries have almost doubled in that same amount of time. I'm just wondering if you can give an idea as far as like what has led to this significant increase over the last 4 years, and how come we're seeing this increase but still needing more resources?
Councillor Peabody, so I did review the information you sent out, and I'd hoped to have a discussion about it before it got raised here, because there are some incorrect assumptions there. So you're correct in 2.9. That's correct, that it's increased the total cost to provide the service, including municipal staff and the RCMP contract. The RCMP contract in that time, since 2022 through to what we're anticipating for 2026, has gone up almost 42%. The staffing, some of the problems in the numbers were that the original number that was being used as the base was only the salary, whereas the number that was being used in 2026 was salary and benefits. So that skewed the number. So the increase in salaries is the municipal employees that Amanda has walked us through. And I did an analysis of those positions, applied the inflationary factor through the collective agreement, and I'm actually slightly over. I think the increase was 800 and some, I think was the total I ended up with. And I was able to, well, maybe it was, I think it was 600, and I was able to, when I ran the numbers, including the increase for the collective agreement, I ended up at 700 and something. So I was off by about $80,000. And the reason I was probably high was because I had assumed that all of those new positions started on January 1st and they were all paid the highest rate. So my analysis was too high. And the reason for that was because of those two things. So I was able to explain exactly the increase in the municipal staff increase of about whatever it was, I said $700,000 or $800,000, based on the positions that Amanda walked council through a few minutes ago. And then with respect to the policing contract, just to touch a little bit on what Councillor Blissett was referring to, we've done that. We have done creative accounting around the policing contract. We have held back $200,000. At one point, it was with council's endorsement. Prior to that, we were already risk managing the RCMP contract. We had, if there was a number in the budget, and often our numbers were held back a few years. And so when we got new numbers from the RCMP, updated numbers, we said, no, you stick to this budget. This is the number we have in our budget. You stick to that. And that, in effect, did some other risk managing. So we have been doing that. And what has happened is that, you're right, that used to be a model we could rely on. Then we start to see, and it probably started when we started looking at those extra four, the unfunded four, where, and also the extra travel costs and the high surge in overtime, where I can't rely on, I can't run it like that because I'm going to get caught. And I did get caught. So, you know, with all due respect, we have been creative on the accounting side. And I don't believe that that is a solution any longer. How you get 26 boots, or what is that? 52 boots on the ground, how you do that isn't going to be an accounting exercise. You need to fund it, however you're going to fund it. And then if, you know, and then these collective agreements are further going to complicate the flexibility we're trying to put into the budgeting for it, because again, I can't rely on anything. They say 3.5 and then it ends up being something completely different and I can't fund it. So I, with all due respect, would prefer not to creatively account for the funding of the RCMP contract into the foreseeable future. I'm not saying we can never do that again, but I'm saying for the time being, I would not recommend that.
Thank you, Charlotte. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. I'd like to take a bit of a step back and, how much we appreciate the work that you and your members do. So you've identified the possibility for a new unit called a Street Crime Reduction Unit with 2 members. And I'm wondering whether any analysis has been done where you look at, so you've got potentially a street crime reduction unit, frontline policing, you've got general investigations section, you've got community policing, mental health liaison. Has there been an opportunity to analyze the crimes that are being committed in Cranbrook and which of those sections, if you want to call them sections, in essence gets the most action and a number of complaints to deal with, and that the emphasis then be put there in terms of where you allocate your members. So analyze the kinds of crimes that are going on and break them down into those sections, and maybe the street crime reduction unit, without increasing members even, would be the best place to put some of those resources. So first question.
Thank you for the first comment, and a great question. It is like the technology at our disposal for identifying hotspots is fantastic. Now, the most recent update that we had with our Prime database is I can go in simply and just hit and see the problem areas, see the spots that we have to target. It's something that we want our plainclothes people to be able to be proactive on, and they're being proactive. They're the ones, it's fairly time consuming every undercover project that's requested and implemented, and the follow-up documentation, the major case management submissions are overwhelming. From my day, it's become so much more complicated. So what our model is, and we haven't gone too far into the mandate till we see if it's going to be successful, but it's on the general duty side. So it's in line with the general duty members. We figure out, look, we've adapted our shift schedule based on calls for service time of day. We've been analyzing that for a decade, and we know the busy times of day, but we have to follow certain, there's those templates to get people our minimums met for 24 hours a day. Having a crime reduction unit in uniform, able to go out and hit those spots that who's doing what now. Like, we know who's doing what sometimes, and we don't have the resource free to be able to go and deal with it and sit on them. When I was in charge of the prolific offender unit in Kamloops, it was fantastic. Like, somebody fed us the info, or we got it ourselves, set up on somebody, and sometimes it was as easy as 10-15 minutes and you got them in a curfew breach. Sometimes you follow them and got them in the middle of an offense. Giving people the ability to just, okay, you're not going to the 911 calls unless we need you. Focus on getting this guy off the road, and then we have 7 less break and enters reported that week because we were able to get ahead of it instead of behind it. If that answers the question.
So I'll just leave this with you. Like, looking down the list, I'm wondering whether in the long run, community policing and mental health liaison might be 2 of the most important positions to keep to reduce crime in Cranbrook in the long run, looking at the kinds of crimes that are committed. The second one is when I think of crime and dealing with crime in Cranbrook, I think of a partnership, and I'm wondering how far the discussions have gone on that partnership, because obviously RCMP members are the most expensive, bylaw are the second most expensive, and watch clerks are the third or least expensive out of that team of 3. When you look at the number of service complaints that have come in, have you ever looked at it to say, well, if we had a well-trained, efficient, and effective bylaw service, they should be looking after that aspect of crime in Cranbrook, and trying to sort it out, like a sit down between our CAO, yourself, Amanda, and say, all right, in future, these kinds of crimes are going to be handled by this part of enforcement, because maybe bylaw should be handling 25% of the calls that you get in the end, and it's less expensive to do it that way.
I can kind of speak Amanda will probably fill in the blanks after, but exactly as you're saying, like Amanda's done a lot of work researching everything from the community safety officers, all the different municipalities that have been looking at that exact same thing. And, you know, that was our pitch with the watch clerks. Like, you don't have to be a police officer carrying a gun to write a report to Crown. It was a dark and stormy night. Things happened. The engagement with bylaws, you know, there's no reason why it can't go both ways in support of each other. We are the most expensive option, of course, but that's one thing that was found. We record every other municipality, no matter what they transition to. The safety required an RCMP officer to be there. We are seeing like that the investment in the community engagement coordinator position is paying off dividends from not just, you know, painting such a fantastic picture on social media and media releases to let the community know what's happening, but everything from like the Block Watch program. Like, we've already seen one pod, shall we say, of businesses that are working together to try and identify, you know, where, if I'm going to a break and enter, it may be caught on video, it may not be. Maybe the person's disguised, even if it is. I'd love to have the time to hit 12 businesses on canvassing and say, do you have something around this time where in the Peel model, the police or public or police, they're communicating amongst each other, kind of like the Downtown Business Association does. And that information is being made available to us so we can actually solve these things. And it is going back to the first, thinking outside the box, finding those things, getting our volunteers up and running. And, you know, hey, we got a suspicious person over here, or this is the person, this is the elf on the shelf from Wanted Wednesday that Councillor Peabody has provided us information on as well. They can give us tips to actually get to where we need to be and be more strategic in how we police. So, Amanda.
Thank you, Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor. That is a great suggestion and certainly the direction that we want to go. And I think that was part of CAO Faircho's goal in combining police support services with bylaw. Both portfolios will fall under my umbrella. And so we are already looking at opportunities of how can we utilize both resources efficiently and effectively to manage some of these risks that we're seeing, some of the crimes and the trends that we're seeing in our community. There's certainly some opportunity to do that through the bylaw side. The challenge that exists currently is the bylaw team is relatively small. We have one parking patrol officer, 2 bylaw officers, and a bylaw supervisor. So in terms of what impact that we would have with that team is challenging. Bylaw Services also has limits to authority, so they cannot recommend charges to Crown Council for criminal offences, whereas RCMP can. So I think there's absolutely a model in there that we could find where Bylaw Services may be doing some of those proactive patrols and taking some of that off of RCMP's plate, and probably some other areas where we can reduce some of that workload from RCMP, but they won't replace it. So I absolutely welcome the opportunity to have further discussions in the new year around what bylaw services model we would like to see in our community. I also just wanted to mention around the watch clerks because I've heard that the watch clerks come up a couple of times throughout the evening. The watch clerks, when they were added back in, was it 2022, they were very effective in reducing workload for our RCMP members. The purpose was to keep RCMP members on the road and alleviate that administrative burden. What we've seen over the last year, particularly with body-worn cameras coming in, is the workload related to body-worn camera, particularly transcription, just preparing the disclosure of body-worn camera evidence has increased so significantly for our watch clerks. The amount of administrative support outside of that they're able to provide to the RCMP has drastically decreased, which means now we have our police officers at their computers, putting together those reports to Crown Council. We're estimating right now that transcription alone for body-worn cameras is about 50 to 60% of our watch clerk daily tasks. It's quite significant.
Thank you for that. That's an interesting result there. I'm just going to make a few comments. So I think we're really talking, and it's been mentioned here a couple of times, there's 2 issues here, resources and budget, okay? We've seen typically 22 officers over the last number of years. Been fairly consistent, 22. A few years ago, we said, okay, let's increase it to 26, anticipating or hoping that maybe Ottawa would provide a few more. We had Ottawa's blessing on that one, the province and Ottawa. And then a year later, we went back to the table and said, let's up that to 2 more. So that takes us to 30. And we still have 22 on a day-to-day. And that's a fact. The stat, if that's correct, that, you know, we just had a pool go through and 3 officers come west. Well, you know what, Cranbrook's probably not going to get those officers, you know, because there's a pretty big demand out there for recruits. So, you know, saying we want more officers, I don't think is a solution, but I can sure tell you, Barry, that I think part of a solution to Cranbrook's issue would be a dedicated street crime reduction unit. Absolutely, if that's their sole role, and they get out there and they hit it hard, and that's all they do, they could make a difference. I don't know that applying, you know, moving it, kicking it up the chain and asking for 2 more staff is going to do that. You know, we have met for the last 3 years regularly. You know, with the public safety minister, you know, with representatives from the RCMP, and we talk about this. And well, you know, yeah, well, you know, we got to get innovative, and they're all over this. Yeah, pilot projects. How many times have we mentioned pilot projects to the upper levels of government? And they're like this. Oh, well, we'd sure consider anything like that, and we hear that. So I'm just wondering maybe if it's not time to say, we have this initiative we want to try here. We need X officers, 2 officers for a dedicated street crime, and we want to do a pilot in Cranbrook, and this a 2-year pilot. And you know what? Let's just see what results it brings. No, and everybody's kind of smiling here, and I get it. But if we don't ask, and you know, they're the ones who are saying, come to us if it's a good suggestion, we'd be more than happy to support it. So, you know, I think that might be a first step in that. Here's what you've told us in the past couple of years. We think we have something here. You know, our NCO brings it to us saying, this is a viable solution for our situation. We agree. Would you sponsor this? Would you promote this? Or is this just noise? Because, you know, sooner or later, we have to get to the point. We're doing everything we can do as elected officials, working with that senior level above us, trying to solve the problems in the community. They don't hear it. We hear it from the constituents, and you guys do too. And you know what? And that's the #1 concern in Cranbrook right now, is crime and all this stuff associated with that. And it's incoming at record levels. So I'm saying, why wouldn't we try this? And then you know what? If there's a rejection, we got to be straight up front going forward and going, you know what? There's no point in talking to you, maybe because it's just noise. I'm a believer that if you're going to solve something, and we're talking about it this year, and we all agree this is a serious problem, and we need to find solutions, if we're still having that same conversation 1 year later, it's noise. We're not going anywhere, you know? So I think it's time to go to the government, the province, and say, are you serious? And help us. Because we've got to remember one more thing here. The province is in part responsible for our rise and our increase in crime, okay? In incidents of crime and our statistics. We're a regional center, which was brought up. Absolutely. Those aren't all Cranbrook people. If we were a typical 21,000 population out in some sleepy place somewhere, our incidence of crime wouldn't be close to what it is. It's the province's lack of taking care of the mentally ill, housing, and all this, okay? That's their responsibility. So we're not going to keep throwing that at them, but we're coming up with a solution to try and minimize the impact on our residents, okay? And on our policing resources who are burning out, and make no mistake, it's no different than we just talked about with library. You know, how long is this sustainable? You know, if they're not producing new recruits, and they're not coming out, and they're not replacing, and we see this this incidence of members going off for different reasons, and it is, and I don't blame them. This isn't a sustainable model anymore. What the RCMP is now promoting is not a sustainable model. Amanda, you're absolutely right, and you know that's where we need to go. We need to do more on our end because you know with bylaw, how do we pay for more? Well, you know what? If we're not getting the 22 and we're paying for 20, so we should have used the you know those 4 FTEs to enhance our bylaw, higher level of training, more numbers so they could work. Okay, so I think that integration is going to work really well. That's one great solution going forward. But I think we have to go back to them and say, this is it. Let's be honest. Councillor Graham, he brought it up. Ottawa is not honoring the contract. Ottawa has a contract with the city of Cranbrook for 26 staff. They have determined that the city of Cranbrook is the size that needs 26 members. We have not seen 26 members, I don't think, for 26 years. But you know what I mean? It's been a long time. So that really is a breach of contract. You know, all the small communities are saying that are impacted the same way we are by the regional influx. So, you know, I think it's time to sort of call this. Let's call out the provincial government, request this pilot and say, we're kind of at the end of finding solutions. And this cost, do they think it's reasonable at over $1 million? So $1.1 million in overtime costs, you know what, when 350 or 260,000 is 1% of our tax levy too. They got to consider this. We don't have this great tax base either, right? So that has to be considered as well. And then I think, you know what, if we do get a rejection, no, thanks for the idea, but you know, maybe next time, then maybe, you know what, maybe that's written right in there. Sorry, but you know what, I guess our next alternative is protect our interests. The city of, that's our role here, to protect the city of Cranbrook residents and our interests, and you are our police force, and to protect our members. Guess what? 19% of the incidents have been in Area C, and it's an awful thing to do. But you know what? Sooner or later, you got to say, here's a line. And you know what? Ethically, you could say, is it right? But you know what? I certainly think that when you're dealing, if you're dealing with senior legislators or, you know, senior powers that have no interest in cooperating and really helping you, and you know, it's just all noise. Guess what? We're tired of your noise. This is drastic action. Sometimes drastic actions will make them work, make them listen. So, you know, I'm not looking for a response, but I'm just saying maybe it's time that because we're dealing with two different things. You know, we can deal with the budget once we, you know, establish where we're going, resources and program wise. If this program won't, if the Solicitor General and the provincial policing, which is the superintendent or whatever he is, you know, if they won't support this, oh, Matt, you got to really think about this. Well, this is a solution. If they won't try a pilot project, and I'm going on, but it's just, it really bothers me that the last 2 or 3 years, whenever we've sat down with that level of government, pilot project was the pet word. And they're all over, oh, we're all over pilot project. Well, let's just see if they really are and if they're willing to support us. If they're not, guess what? There's nice to be and there's reality. And you know what? I guess this is our new reality. That's thank you. Thank you for you know, telling us what our reality is. Now we're going to tell you our reality. We're paying for 26 members. We're getting 22. Those 22 members are going to serve the city of Cranbrook. They're not going outside the city of Cranbrook. I'm sorry, but that's just my thoughts. Okay. Any further? Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to help my understanding and the communities, can you remind us what your service area is and how is policing funded for the area outside of the city of Cranbrook?
Great question, thanks. So obviously the municipality is municipal members, and we have 4 provincial constable positions Again, we're an integrated detachment, so it's not the Hazard County line. Everybody goes to everything kind of thing. But our boundaries extend to Irishman's Creek to the west, about 1 kilometer past Jaffrey to the east, up to Wycliffe, and down to the U.S. border. So it's significant geographical area. We run the 4 provincial positions to make sure they're always occupied, so that we're putting the money to the provinces as much as possible. But if we were to let it ride and who's off, who's medical, whatever, the city would see less slippage. I mean, we could easily move those positions over to the, like swap them with the provincial side to show the full salary dollars, and those conversations for sure about, do we send people outside city limits? Do we, we've had those conversations. There's so many challenges that we're all on the same page for, is find that solution. But yeah, it's complicated. It's a lot of administrative moving people around and juggling and stuff. And it is disproportionate when you look at the copper pop, different things. We're trying to work on all those things. The RCMP does come with a lot of things, like the emergency response team, the tactical team, the underwater recovery team, the dog handler. It's not sometimes, because it may be of value to actually bring somebody in from finance to give us the lowdown on all these things, because I know, like, it's great to take the position and put the province on notice that we need more things, but there's also what is it, Annex A? There's a fixed amount of provincial positions within the province, so we can do what we want. There's no extra to be had till they open up that thing and add, unless they want to divert people to here. But maybe it'd be helpful for somebody to come in and explain that at a much better level than I can.
More question for Councilor Popoff?
Yes, thank you.
Move on.
So, Amanda, I'm really interested in hearing more from you about how, in that perfect world that you see, that we can integrate bylaw as part of this service to relieve some of the workload and burden from the RCMP members, and make it a smoother system. And I think if bylaw might have better record of employment and showing up for work. Sorry, wrong word. But as opposed to the vacancies that we're encountering, right? So I'd like to hear more about integrating bylaw and what that would look like, and what's the resources required for that? Because if that can relieve some of this burden, I think that might be a part of that solution. Thank you.
Yep. So thank you very much, Amanda and Barry. I know it's always a tough one when you got to come before council with budget, and you know what, you got to defend your side, and we've got decisions we have to make. But make no mistake, you hear criticisms around the table. There's absolutely no criticism directed at the Cranbrook detachment, yourself or your members. You know what, council's extremely happy, with the administration and the policing with the resources we got. Unfortunately, you guys are stuck in the middle, and yeah, it goes with the job, and that's one part that really frustrates me as well. That I might as well say it. I personally don't believe the RCMP takes care of their people very well. There's a time they didn't take care of their people on the ground, but I don't think they really take care of their administration and their the rents, from that level up. They really don't. You guys are fed to the wolves. You see every time you come in, and you guys are taking the hit, and dead serious. Guys down in Ottawa, I don't care what you're hearing today, and I truly believe that. And that's Councillor Graham's point too. Is what, Ottawa's broken, and you know what, and they've got a model that needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. And they're not supporting I don't think they're supporting the members of the right reason. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, let's take a quick break, guys, a stretch and yeah. Okay, we'll resume our meeting. On to the next topic. Charlotte, lead us through it.
Thank you, Mayor. Up next is our municipal grant program. So the schedule that is attached shows the applications that were received for 2026, along with the grant amounts requested. All the applications were screened for eligibility. Each organization's charitable and nonprofit status were confirmed through CRA Charitable Registration Database and/or the BC Society's registry. All applicants are in good standing. Members of council have reviewed each application and provided individual recommended funding amounts. These recommendations were returned to staff to compile and calculate average recommended award for each applicant. Notable considerations in this year's scoring include Cranbrook and District Restorative Justice, Councillor Popoff as a board member recused himself, and Symphony of the Kootenays, Councillor Wayne Stetsky as a board member recused himself from providing a score, and the total score was divided by 6 to calculate the average. The municipal grant program is capped at 1% of the previous year's tax levy less the road dedicated tax. At the November 26, 2025 special meeting, council resolved to maintain the municipal grant budget at the 2025 level, also the same as it was in 2024. The adjusted budget for 2026 is $278,760, reduced from the original 226 budget of $346,416. Average calculated grant amounts have been rounded up to the nearest $10. The total recommended allocation, including standing grants, is $272,912, leaving $5,848 in unallocated funds. And today, council will review each applicant line by line. Should council wish to adjust the recommended funding by any applicant, motions may be made at that time. A final vote on the total grant allocation, inclusive of standing grants, will occur at the end of the meeting. So just a couple of notations here. There were three applicants that received no or less than 50% support from individual councillors, meaning that there is no award considered. And as I mentioned earlier, Symphony of the Kootenays, Councillor Stetsky has recused himself, so that average has been divided by 6. And also there was a last minute amendment moving $5,000 into the, sorry, Melissa? From restorative justice to Spirit of the Rockies. Yeah, thank you. From restorative justice to Spirit of the Rockies. So there is because that changes the average for Spirit of the Rockies, the remaining amount has been adjusted to $5,138. So we're going to get Melissa to put the table up on the screen. There we go. So we will start with the Sweetheart Society. The average award, rounded to the nearest $10, has resulted in $11,510 on an ask of $13,500. So unless I hear something from council, actually raise your hand if you would like to have a discussion about them as I go through. I'll read them out, the average award with the ask. Councillor Blissett.
Could you also, right now, skip down to the bottom to see how much we have to play with still?
5,138.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the Sweetheart Society, average grant is $11,510 on an ask of $13,500. The Boys and Girls Club, the average rounded to the nearest 10 is $2,570 on an ask of $5,000. The Community Connection Society of BC, average rounded to the nearest 10 is $1,160 on an ask of $2,300. Yep.
Let's go through Charlotte on this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. For the Community Connection Society Southeast BC, the first ask is regarding porta potties. So one is at the public garden, and then I believe the other was at the hydroponic grow site. Anyways, so regarding the public garden location, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I was wondering if someone might want to start a conversation with the Noon Hour Rotary Club and Community Connections of the city perhaps to explore a permanent washroom facility there. Because it sounds like we've been funding a porta potty there for quite some time. So I really appreciate that the Noon Hour Rotary Club did such an amazing job of the washroom in Rotary Park, and they're wonderful and amazing. Anyways, I just think it sounds like it's been a pretty long-term grant around this porta potty, so I wonder if it actually might be worth a discussion around a permanent washroom facility of some kind there.
So, good comment. Should the city see some potential viability and affordable ability to make that work, please present it to our Noon Hour Rotary Club for consideration. But the city would have to do the investigation first.
Thank you, Council. The second application from the Community Connection Society of Southeast BC resulted in an average grant of $3,330 on an ask of $8,325. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Charlotte. So for this one, this was a tricky one, and thank you very much to our CFO and team for preparing the information on this. It was a miss in terms of getting the notice out and having the information to bill these folks for these taxes. And because of timelines, it's a miss for 2 years in a row, right? And so normally we would not see this grant request here. So it's here because of a unique set of circumstances that we were trying to be helpful to these folks that they weren't aware they had to pay these taxes, right? And so we're trying to be helpful to them. And I do think, as the city, as I say, mistakes are going to happen, things are going to fall through the cracks. That's what happened in this case. We're aware of it now. But that's why I funded it, because I think we have some responsibility that they incurred this expense. They also have some responsibility because as nonprofits, we should be thinking ahead to what bills we might owe. And if we don't receive them, we should probably be asking. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly, that I do think, although it's unique and somewhat unusual, that it was appropriate to look at some funding for this item, because I think the city accidentally, but we had some responsibility that they incurred this cost.
Councillor Stetson.
Yep, thank you. I believe, Charlotte, that I raised the question about whether or not they would be able to cover this from some other fund since they are funded. And I think you said yes, that they had already taken care of it, or am I misreading that?
Councillor Stetsky, I believe the question was that your question where you said if we could amend the bylaw, the permissive tax exemption bylaw?
No, mine was specifically around the money, and because they're a pretty big organization. And so would the money come from somewhere else if it didn't come from the city to cover that tax problem?
Yeah, so I think there was some discussion, maybe was it the council contingency? Was that something that came up? Because there's the grant program, and then the only other option is council contingency. Maybe I'm not.
I think what
remembering
he's referring
correct.
to is having community connections pay for the tax as opposed to the city pay for the tax.
Community connection, well, okay, so once city-owned land is tax exempt unless there's an occupier on city-owned land. Once there's an occupier on city-owned land, it ceases to be exempt and it becomes taxable. So that's what's happened here. And so there is no, for the city to pay the taxes would have to come from some budget item, such as the grant or grant pot or council contingency, which of course, you know, it by far exceeds the amount that, that they're asking for.
Yeah, so my question was broader than that. Community Connections Society is a pretty big organization. And my question was, have they already paid those taxes? And if so, do they not have other sources of income potentially to cover the cost?
Sorry, Councillor Stetsky, it must be getting late. Yes, they are a big organization, and have the taxes been paid, Melissa? No, the taxes have not yet been paid. So not only are the taxes outstanding, but there would also be interest and penalties, interest accruing on the outstanding taxes from last year, and there would have been a penalty on this year and last year's unpaid taxes. And yes, they have other sources of funding.
Councillor Bassett?
Thank you. So what I'm thinking we could do here is because if we fully fund this, that'll take, we have $5,138. It'll take that $5,000 out of this, and we'll have like, what, 143 left. So do you want to do that right? I would like to make a motion to do that right now, and then we can see if we want to change that later. Just highlight it to yourself, because I think it is reasonable to fund that fully. I wasn't aware of that when I did my award.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, Councillor Bassett. Seconder is Councillor Ray. Discussion? Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I'd like to defer that decision until we go through the list, and particularly because we're going to come down to Cranbrook District Restorative Justice Society. I had a conversation with Amanda here when we broke, in terms of how important she thinks that is to the future of dealing with crime and justice in Cranbrook, to the point of where I was looking to put $5,000 on the Restorative Justice Society, which gives them seed money to then go after other grants.
So we have a motion on the floor. Now we have a motion to defer. Can I get a seconder to the motion to defer? Councillor Popoff, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is, yeah, okay. So we'll go back to our original motion. The motion is defeated. We'll go back to the original motion. Discussion. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the key point for me on this was accidental, inadvertent, but it was that the city didn't send Community Connections their tax notice. So they did not know they had to pay. And then because of timing, that affected 2 fiscal years. And so that's why we're looking at this amount. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And I believe I said something about, 2 years. So it's the 25 and the 26 taxes, and they couldn't get their application in on time for the 26 taxes.
Yeah. So like I say, inadvertent, accidental, but regardless, the error is on the city's part. And that's why I feel, in the interest of fair play and our integrity, that's why I put it to be fully funded.
Thank you for that.
And in future years, I look forward to, we should not have that item there, which will be good, because we would happily spend that $8,000 on other initiatives in the community. But in the interest of our integrity, I think it is important we fund this. So I will be voting in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff.
Thank you. I understand that piece. What we've done in the past is we've put stars next to line items as we get all the way through it, and then go back and review how many stars, and then have this conversation of where we want to allocate monies. I would recommend we do that. There might be some other good reasons why we put a star next to something, then come back and review it, and then have this motion if that's the only thing that's outstanding. So
It's going to be a long
voting
night.
against
We're
it.
going to do that.
Well, but Mr. Mayor, that's what we've done in the past.
But we have a resolution. Yes, Councillor Bassett.
And so we only have $5,138 to play with. So it's not like other years when we've had more discretionary funds. So that's why I thought for the ease of simplicity, we know that we're adding 5,000 onto this. And so if we do it now, it just makes it cleaner. That's my point.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and so we'll speak to the motion. Councillor Papa.
Well, since I've been recognized, so then let's just approve the whole thing if that's the case. Let's approve this motion. We have no more money to play with. So then let's just forego the rest of the debate. And just move on to the next agenda item.
So let's deal with the motion on hand first, and if you care to raise a second motion after this one, we'll do so. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In light of this motion passing, I would like to move that we approve the rest of the funding for this.
Thank you. That's a motion on the floor. And we have a seconder, Councillor Popoff. Discussion? Councillor Ray.
I think we just designated $5,000. We still have $138. I would like to apply that to one of the grants. So I will be voting against this motion respectfully.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? Guys, so the motion's carried. Oh, no, sorry, it's defeated. My apologies. Yeah. Motion's defeated. Yeah. Somebody want to, does somebody see a spot where they want to spend $100 and some?
Go line by line,
I
line by
mean,
line.
it should be pretty obvious.
Okay.
Okay, sure. Just
Okay.
do each one.
So just so I'm clear, so what we are saying is we're going to add the 8325 for the community connections and leaving that 140. Okay, got it. And so I'll just, so Caranbrook and District Arts Council, the average award was 21,000 on an ask of 27,000. The Cranbrook and District Restorative Justice Society received, Councillor Peabody moved his award, so received no award recommendations. Cranbrook and District Search and Rescue, the average was 13,720 on an ask of 20,000. Cranbrook Community Theatre, the award was 6,140 on an ask of 8,000. The Cranbrook Food Bank Society, the award was for 5,000, equal to the ask. The ask was also 5,000. The Cranbrook Triton's Swim Club, less than 50% of council supported award, so there was no averaging. Fisher Peak Performing Arts Society averaged at 4,290 on an ask of 5,000. The Key City Theatre Society Children's Festival, the award was for 1,500 on an ask of 1,500. The Key City Theatre Society Ed Fest, the award was for 9,700 on an ask of 15,000. Kids Sport, the award was 2,180 on the ask of 5,000. And then Tanaha Nation Council Street Angel Program, the award recommendation averaged at 11,570 on an ask of 15,000. The Living Lakes Canada Society received one award recommendation, meaning that less than 50% of council supported the award, so there was no averaging an award. The Mean to Be Loved Pet Rescue Society received an average award of 420 on an ask of 600. The Salvation Army, the average award was 9,290 on an ask of 100,000. The Spirit of the Rockies, the average award was 9,290 on an ask of 10,000. Summit Community Services Society, average award was 2,420 on an ask of 6,000. Symphony of the Kootenays, Councillor Stetsky recused himself, so the total was divided by 6. That average resulted in a recommended award of $2,710 on an ask of $7,500. And the Wycliffe Exhibition Association, the award recommendation was for $360 on an ask of $1,000.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move that we allocate the remaining funds to EdFest.
Seconder. Councillor Papa. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, so that concludes the award side of this part of the budget meeting. So the total is now 278,760, including the commitments that exist before we consider the application. So those commitments are the Cranbrook and District Search and Rescue, the fleet insurance, $2,252. The Canada Day Organizing Committee, $25,000. City of Cranbrook Scholarship, $35,000 or $3,500. Save the Track, $4,000, and Key City Theatre, $120,000. And that then results in the $278,760, leaving no amount remaining. Councillor Stetsky.
Is this the last year for saving the track?
Sorry, Councillor Stetsky through the mayor. No, 2027 it expires. Okay, so the next step would then be for council to consider a resolution that council approve the list as presented of municipal grant awards for 2026.
Pardon me, mover, please, Councillor Bissett. Councillor Ray, got the order right tonight. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, that's carried.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, Melissa. That was super helpful. Melissa does an awful lot of work, not an awful lot, but does a lot of work with this program. She spends a lot of time communicating with the applicants and making sure that they have submitted what they need to submit. And she is very, very helpful to them. And a lot of them would not be getting their applications in if it wasn't for Melissa.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Melissa. Councillor Bissett.
I just want to say, as a city councillor, this is one of the better things we do. And same with like the grant, when we do the READY grants, like to me, these are some of the better parts of the job. So thank you.
Okay, so the final piece for tonight's meeting is to review with council where we're at with the tax levy increase and to present there a few motions for council's consideration and then to adjourn for our 2026 budget meeting. So the schedule on showing the impacts to the 2026 tax levy. It is on page 37, but you don't have page numbers. So is everybody good with the schedule I'm referring to? Okay, probably could have put that up on the screen. So the 6.5 was the increase that we talked about when we were last together on November 26. At the November 26th meeting, the municipal grants were held at the 2025 level, resulting in $67,656 being avoided in the tax levy and reducing the previous 6.5% by 0.18%, and then resulting in a tax levy increase being presented for council today at 6.32%. So there is the option for reduction, which is to direct the relieved fire hall loan payment to the reserve. So before we look at this in a little bit more detail, I'd like to then go to the memo, because there are a couple of resolutions there that before we get to that final resolution of the what to do with the fire hall loan payment. Not the final resolution, because there's one after that as well. So the first one is a bit of a housekeeping item. It is the municipal grant program and really also the permissive tax exemption program. This was a discussion we had around the permissive tax exemptions and the late applications, the grant applications. And we have, I'll just read the little narrative here. So at November 26th budget meeting, council considered whether to accept the late submission of the application from Fisher Peak Performing Arts Society. The deadline for submission is September 1st. Policy number 40-51 Municipal Grant Program Procedure Section 5.5 states that late applications will not be accepted. Despite this, applications are routinely late or not submitted at all until after the organization is reminded that they have missed the deadline, and some need to be reminded several times. Staff have been exercising leniency and allowing late submissions. This practice began because organizations were experiencing high levels of volunteer staff turnover or new staff were unfamiliar with the process. However, over time, the number of late applications and the degree to which they are late has increased significantly, suggesting a lack of commitment from the applicants and leading to logistical challenges for staff and council. The Fisher Peak application was received after the package of applications was issued to council for their individual award consideration. And the reason we noted that is because that we have never allowed a late application once the package has gone to council, but which was why we asked for council's input on whether or not the application should be received. So council discussed the late application and the broader issues associated with late applications. Council voted to accept the late application, but suggested that for future intakes, late applications should no longer be accepted. So staff have drafted a resolution, and I'll read that resolution for council's consideration, that council directs staff on a go-forward basis to adhere strictly to late application clauses within the municipal grant and permissive property tax exemption procedures and deny late applications. So
Councillor Ray.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to see this motion come forward. I think for us, it's important to remember we're one funder among many. Like, we're important for our community, but in the bigger picture, we are just one funder among many. And certainly with other funders, they are firm on their submission dates. And I think out of a place of compassion and trying to be helpful and flexible, we have been very flexible with our submission deadline, but it actually, I think, has gotten to the point that really it's unsustainable. So I think this is a really positive motion. And, I know we've touched on it before, but just to mention again, and I'll leave it with our CAO to consider, it would be interesting at some point to do a bit of a memo maybe on the amount of staff time that goes into this program and just a rough cost of what that represents. And I agree with Councillor Bessette, like it is a nice thing to do, to be involved in doing these grants. But for what is meant to be a policy focused governance council, this might be actually getting quite operational. So somewhere down the road, it would be interesting to have a bit of analysis on that and think a bit out of the box and look at other options. So in the meantime, I'm very pleased to see this motion.
Thank you. Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Also, at the November 24th regular meeting, Council asked for the balance in the council contingency. So after Council approved a donation to the U13 AA Cranbrook East Kootenay Avalanche hockey team of $1,307.98 funded from council contingency, the balance in the contingency fund is $5,135.22.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Charlotte, quick question. You might not have it off the top of your head, but how many times do we access council contingency this year? Because it goes December or January to December, correct? So how many grants did we give out just in, if you know?
Councillor Graham through the mayor, I'm afraid I don't know that, but it's not a lot.
No, I'm aware of that. I just was curious, just
I don't
was
know.
it like 4 or 5? Just out of.
I'm sorry, I don't have that number. If Charlene is listening, she might be able to let me know. All right, so now also at the November 26th meeting, special meeting, staff reviewed the funding of the 2026 loan payment for the ladder truck from the surplus with council. Due to lead times for design and procurement, the city has ended up with overlapping debt payments on the 2 pieces of fire apparatus for 26 and 27. To avoid short-term spike in the tax levy, the 2026 ladder truck payment of $303,082 is being funded from surplus. The funding of the payment from surplus reduces the surplus balance to $2.4 million. Per reserves and surplus policy number 40-50, the minimum recommended balance in the general accumulated surplus is $3 million. Without funding the debt payment from surplus, the 2026 tax increase is 7.29%. Per the discussion at the November 26 meeting, staff are now bringing back a resolution for council's consideration that authorizes the funding of the 2026 loan payment from the general fund accumulated surplus. I will read the resolution. That council authorize the 2026 loan payment of $303,082 for the fire ladder truck be funded from the general fund accumulated surplus.
Mover, Council Stetsky, seconder, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. Charlotte, I got a question. We're talking about 303,000 on the page 337 when you've gone through the what's causing the increase. You've got 248,000. Or am I reading something wrong here?
No, Mayor Price. So the new fire truck payment of 284,000 is adding to the tax levy. But what we're doing is we're funding the ladder truck debt payment, so that's showing as a reduction of 303.
Okay. Thank you so much for the clarification. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll just have I'll walk through the fire hall loan payment. So this item has not been embedded into the tax levy increase. Right now, after the municipal grant reduction, we're sitting at 6.32. This fire hall loan payment option would reduce the tax levy to 5.67. So I'll read through the description in your package. So at the November 26th special meeting, staff reviewed the option of not increasing transfers to the facilities reserve in 2026 by $248,299, the amount of the annual payment on the now retired fire hall debt. So staff presented 3 versions of the facilities reserve schedule. The first version assumed that the annual transfers to the reserve would increase starting in 2026, with additional increases in 27 and 28. The increases were funded from debt payments no longer needed when the fire hall, the library, and the memorial, 2010 memorial project, loans were paid out in 25, 26, and 27. So this version of the facilities reserve showed a positive ending balance in all 5 years of the financial plan. The balance at the end of December 31st, or at December 31st, 2030, was projected to be $865,000. The second version reflected the same information, except that there would be no increase in 2026. In 2027, the increase would be equal to the total of the fire hall and the library retired debt payments, $349,874. In 2028, the retired debt payment on the 2010 memorial renovation would also be transferred to the reserve, and that payment is $163,626. This scenario resulted in a $145,000 deficit in the reserve in 2029, and the balance in the reserve at the end of 2030 was projected to be positive $564,000. And so the third version reflected no increase in the annual transfers to the reserve over the 5 years, 2026 through 2030. So those 3 loan payments would not be going into the reserve. They would instead be released into general revenue. This scenario resulted in a deficit in 3 of the 5 years. The first deficit was in 2028, $619,000. At December 31st, 2030, the deficit in the reserve would be $1.5 million. So those 3 schedules have been provided for council's review. It's the same 3 schedules that were in the 2020 or in the November 26th meeting package. So the results assume that all items funded in the reserve happen as planned. That is often not the case. There are several 2025 projects that have been consolidated and are expected to come in under budget, be moved out, or not be needed. This would alter the result of the 3 scenarios outlined above. In addition, there is a robust facility assessment exercise underway. The results of this work are likely to recommend a mixed approach to funding facility maintenance. Recapitalization and project prioritization will likely look different than they do today. The proposed 2026 through 2030 5-year financial plan assumes transfers to the facility reserve will increase. Will increase in 2026, the fire hall loan payment, 2027, the library loan payment, and 2028, the 2010 Memorial Arena loan payment. If council wishes to defer the increase in the transfers to the facility reserve, staff are recommending that only the 2026 increase be reversed. So the other thing to keep in mind here is that by not today, transferring it to the reserve does not represent a tax increase. What it does do is it doesn't give you a tax reduction. When you go to do it next year, the $248,000 will represent a tax increase, because now you're having to find new money to put into the reserve.
Do you want to read the resolution and then we'll have the discussion?
Sure. I'll read the resolution. That council authorize that the increased transfer of $248,299 to the facilities reserve currently reflected in the proposed 2026 to 2030 5-year financial plan, being the amount equal to the annual payment on the now retired fire hall debt, be reversed.
Mover, please. Councillor Graham, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. So we are having a tax increase, even with doing this. We're going to have a over 5% tax increase. Plus, we heard the other night about, record-breaking building permits. And we can even see on our skyline some more buildings coming up. I anticipate we will have more revenue coming in in another year. So we should think about that, because that will also help offset this tax increase that you're talking about for 2026, because we'll have more revenue. So hopefully, if we can keep our costs reasonable, we can manage this. So that's why I'm comfortable moving ahead this way, rather than putting more money in reserves. I know reserves are really comforting from a financial point of view, but I'm also concerned about current taxpayers putting too much money away for the future. So that's why I'm comfortable with supporting this resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very comfortable supporting this resolution, and if we don't fund the reserve at 248,000 in 2026, who cares? It's our policy. We can revisit it and reset the amounts if we want to. So I'm not worried about it at all.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. I'll wear the black hat on this one. I appreciate the comments that have been made. But I think we've seen historically some underfunding to our reserves. So I would rather err on the side of caution, and let's not count our chickens before they're hatched. If next year we find ourselves in the favorable position we anticipate, then we'll be able to make other decisions then. But, you know, when we look at reserves, we've talked about the dual benefit of avoiding borrowing charges and earning interest on our reserves. I think that's a very valuable long-term strategy, and I would prefer to stick with our original strategy, which is in our current financial plan, to put this money into the reserve, because we need to take that multi-generational approach, right? We're wanting to have responsible stewardship of our finances. So we need to be looking at 1 to 3 generations. So that's 20 to 60 years. And to really support that, I believe we need to put this money into the reserve.
Thank you. Further? I agree with Councillor Brissette. I know we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch, but certainly it's very clear that next year is going to be another record building year. The green home alone, you know, this was a small percentage of permitting this year. Next year is the lion's share. You know, we're looking at $1 million just in the DCC, you know, that project in general, and that's just DCC. You look at the permitting values there, you know, you look at what, $7,000 per 100 or something like that. You know, I mean, that's significant on a $232 million project. So, you know, I agree with Councillor Ray, you know, in principle, but I think, you know, over the next couple of years, they are unique, and we should take advantage of the revenues that are coming forward and use them to keep the tax rate down. So thank you. Nothing further. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There's one opposed. Councillor Ray is opposed.
Thank you for that discussion, Council. So the last item is a discussion around the road dedicated tax, the 1% increase. So at the November 19th, 2025 budget meeting, Council elected to defer the decision whether to proceed with the 1% road dedicated tax increase. To be able to finalize the 2026 road program planning, staff are asking for Council's consideration of the 1% road dedicated tax increase. Engineering has provided the following information for Council's consideration. Impact of dedicated tax reduction. Over the past several years, increased costs of construction have outpaced increases in funding, leading to less annual work being completed to replace aging roads, water, and sewer infrastructure, shortfalls in reserve balances and funding available for projects necessary for growth and development, lack of dedicated funding for sidewalks, curbs, pathways, streetlights, intersection improvements, and boulevard beautifications improvements that come out of the same road funds for paving projects. From 2016 to 2025, annual volume of work completed has reduced by 30 to 40% due to cost escalation outpacing funding. Funding resources continue being focused on keeping major roadways safe to travel and replacing road surfaces over utility replacement projects, water and sewer. Funding shortfalls are leaving behind resurfacing of local streets, sidewalk replacement, and other pedestrian and road safety infrastructure. There are also less full-scale resurfacing projects, leading to more patchwork paving to spread out funds and address more high-priority failing areas. As we see major intersection upgrades forecasted due to growth and development, meeting funding targets and adequate reserve balances are becoming significant priorities. In 2004, staff provided an updated road funding forecast target. If we were to apply a modest 2% CPI since then, the following budgetary information would apply to 2026. 2026 target of 5.9 million budget annually to maintain the roads in a 2019 condition. $4 million budget approximately in 2026, including $150,000 in reserves, and 1.9 million shortfall projected. So 1.9 million, resulting in a 1.9 million shortfall for 2026 from targeted road funding amounts. Should funding continue to be short of targeted amounts, the city should consider adopting lower standards lower standards for road conditions to reflect funding levels and/or reducing levels of service to help maintain priority roads. No sidewalks in residential areas, less streetlights, less landscaping and beautification, etc. This will also have consequences on increasing maintenance and repair costs and resources. So again, I have a resolution for council's consideration that council give pre-approval for the general road dedicated tax 1% increase. Councillor Ray has moved
Councillor Ray,
it.
Councillor Popoff.
Okay.
Discussion, Councillor Stetsky.
So back to the basics, we're at 5.67% for a tax increase. If we approve this, then are we up to 6.67 or are we down to 4.67 if we don't approve it?
Councillor Stetsky, if you approve it, you are, you stay at 5.67. Yeah.
Councillor Pacell.
One of the things to consider for people, for our residents, is that we've kind of used rough roads to manage speed on, and when roads get redone, then people, you know, we've had complaints about people driving too fast. So it's just something to think about when residents are thinking about whether they, you know, are unhappy that their road isn't being redone or whatever. It's just, I just throw it out there.
Thank you for that. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think it was in 2016 when staff confronted us with the terrible state of the roads. And not only did we approve the 1%, but we also approved a $10 million borrowing to get a jump start on trying to catch up to all the road disrepair. I'm not suggesting we do that again this year, certainly not for this conversation, but it might be worthwhile for staff to come to council with just how much of a deficit are we facing, and is it getting worse or better with the 1%? And maybe we should have some robust discussion, not today, about some sort of a top up beyond the 1% as a one-time borrowing piece. Maybe some conversation by staff at another time.
Thank you. Further, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Charlotte.
That concludes the package from me for today. Thank you, council.
Charlotte, I'm just going to make a comment here, if I can find where I had it. Just want to put a few things in perspective on projects and spending this year. Earlier we talked about, last session we talked about various projects in the borrowing we had to do. And they're all infrastructure related projects. We had the Gold Creek Dam, Phillips Reservoir bypass, Phillips Reservoir UV, water trunk main PRV upgrade station 1, and Phillips Reservoir 20 in supply. Out of those 6 projects, I would think everybody in this room would agree that 4 are critical projects. We don't have a choice anymore. And I'll go a little bit further than that and suggest that a few of these projects may have been kicked down the road over time. These have been identified years ago and they weren't dealt with. Part of that reason, part of the rationale, keep the tax rate down, right? Keep the tax rate down. If you look at the cost, and I believe the original cost of the Gold Creek Dam was something around $5 million or something, you know, that was years back. It's a, it's a $30 million bill today. So not only are we, this council, having to take care of these projects that have been moved out to save money. If you look at actually how much they're costing today, there was little, actually no money saved. It's an incredible hit to the taxpayer, thinking you were keeping the tax rate down for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years for these projects. When they come in several years later, 4 and 5 times the cost, and we've seen that just over the last 5 years. Never mind, there's some of these projects are 15 years old. So, you know, just to point out the Gold Creek Dam, you know, it's the annual payments on that, $594 million rounded out. Phillips Bypass Reservoir, $540,000. Phillips Reservoir UV, we got grant on that, 155 rounded out. And Phillips Twinning Supply, 525. You do the math, that's over $1.8 million. Now, looking at this year, what are we looking at, Charlotte? Around $385,000 is 1% of our tax levy, something like that, or somewhere 380 to 385. Let's do some serious math here. That's a significant increase. You want to keep that. Now we're paying that, and everybody knows it's not necessarily coming out of the general revenue, but you know what? It's coming out of those funds where we could have been exactly, you know, with the road and these projects, we could be taking on more enhanced projects in the community. So I just want to point that out that, you know, this last couple of years has been extremely difficult budgeting. And this, to me, puts a lot of the stuff into perspective, you know, and how we have to work around some of these critical projects. So we're into a critical spending period because of some of these initiatives. So anyway, I just want to point that out. So thank you. Anything further, Charlotte? Okay, with that, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Ray, Councillor Bassett, all in favor? That was mine.